I was surprised by this movie in many ways.
To say, I was regretting my decision.
I think this would be something I'd show to my kids.
Oh, that's good to hear.
I think it's about a father's love for his child.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And a complete stranger's love for that man's
They
child.
wore really ugly outfits. Puke yellow, prom night, pale blue, you know?
I don't even know where to start with this
Definitely
film.
not a movie I would consider watching unless you tell me to. Hello, I'm Derek,
And I'm Peter.
and this is the Mog Live.
And in this Mog Liveness, we talk about deep, interesting, insightful things that that only a genius like the current president of the United States, who no longer exists, would be able to pick up on.
Yeah, true. This is our sort of sub-series that we like to call Mog-osophy.
Mog-osophy, yeah.
This is episode 2. I really enjoyed last time. It was good.
Yeah, it was good. How many views did you chalk up on YouTube?
Only 2, but we have 10. So there's other people. It might be,
We have 11 since we last saw.
All right. It might be Lachlan or Dara Murray or Alex. These guys. Louise Truran.
Yeah.
If it is you, hi.
Well, but did you actually check to see like how long they listened to it for though?
No. But
It'll
hey,
be
your
the 30 seconds
your
odd
thing
chat.
on tenacious brain, that helped me a lot, you know. The what is it? The anterior mid cingulate cortex, AMCC. So I'll show you guys at home. We've got this new
1,
view.
2, 3, A, B, C.
So this is what Peter was talking about last week, the tenacious brain. This helped me a lot. So you were talking about it as like you build it, something that you build. It's like a muscle that you can sort of work out. You're doing the thing that you don't want to do. And
Yeah,
it made
I've
me
been trying very hard and failing very well.
I don't know, it made me think about also what we were talking about games and like how they're just designed to take our attention. And like if you're building an AI, like a sort of utopian AI from scratch, you wouldn't have that stuff. It's designed to take it off, right? But it's the reverse of the world we live in. We're designed to like be locked into these things and like get hits of dopamine and keep grinding our lives away. It really made me think.
Well, what are you talking about? I mean, that pterodon wouldn't have tamed itself.
But I mean, once you're aware of it, then you can start sort of switching. And also, you know, this is the paper that I think, I'm not sure, where did you hear about it from? It was from
It was it was when I was going on one of my dopamine hits. It was from YouTube. There's a neuroscientist. I will let you know who he is. That had lots of like just interesting things about the brain. Kind of, I guess it's in that realm of hacks, you know, self-hacking things, but it's also just interesting things about the brain as well.
Do you know his name?
I'm trying to figure it out.
I'll check it in here.
Huberman. Andrew Huberman.
HOO.
Yeah, Andrew Huberman.
I'll check it in there so people...
He's got his own... He does podcasts and stuff.
Does he have references in that video?
I don't know.
Yeah. Because I did find this, and they're talking about that stuff, and she was saying that, you know, this sort of area of the brain, you know, it's about resources, and this was quite, you know, a new framework to me. Your body has limited resources, and so it's allocating attention and energy and everything based on these sort of limited resources, and how we rate, you know, effort. So some individuals rate effort as more aversive than others. So it's sort of like you say, it's hacking. You're sort of, even though it's extreme amount of effort, you can sort of play it down in your mind and like and make it less aversive to you. Anyway, it was going into like lots of little things, and I might bring up the PDF. I don't think that was the proper quote. I made these notes very quickly. There was something else. Yeah, like apathy. They're saying like tenaciousness can be also called apathy. You know, in some respects, it is apathetic.
Do you mean a lack of tenacity?
Well, just they're trying to define what it is. Like, it can be called perseverance or grit, persistence, but also can be called apathy. And if you think about it, yeah, it's sort of like.
But apathy is the reverse of that. I would have thought apathy is where you don't care.
You're doing it, but you don't care, kind of like, right?
No, apathetic is. No, apathy generally is. It's not. It's neither an emotional investment, nor is it a disincentive. It's you just don't care about what you're doing. So it's apathy is something that's not related to effort. It's related to.
I know what you're saying, but they're saying this tendency to carry on despite difficulty. That's what they're saying.
I don't think that. Yeah, but I don't think that's apathy. Because it's not about apathy is not about the difficulty. It's more about the disinterest.
Oh, so hang on. Yeah, sorry, I'm reading this wrong. I didn't read this very well. It's defined against its opposite, apathy. So the opposite of that is that.
Yeah.
I need to read it better. But yeah, something like this is what I saw. So like, you got physiological resources, and then it sort of like comes down to how you self-regulate. So they have sort of arousal regulation. And that's like this body's center doing that for you, kind of. And it does it better over time, or depending how you're wired to begin with. It gives you sort of more energy to do the thing over time.
Yeah. I think it's, yeah, with regards to this, the N2 image singular cortex, my understanding of it was that it seems so. It says here, cost benefit computations necessary for tenacity, and tenacity, you know, it's pushing past. It's pushing through a desire, whether you desire to do something or not. You're pushing through with it regardless. I can kind of see how you would get apathy and tenacity. That pushing throughness, but apathy is a bit different in terms of a lack of interest, whereas tenacity is investment regardless of this sort of the difficulty of it, whether that difficulty is your desire to do it or like it's sort of like you don't want to get up in the morning but you know you have to. It's the know you have to part. In terms of if it was just like it's not doing something for the sake of doing it, it's doing it because you know it's a goal for you, it's something that you want to do, you've done that cost benefit computation, you've decided that it's worth investing in regardless of the hindrance, you push and persevere.
Well, that's what I'm sort of saying as well, is like so where does that energy come from? It's sort of like where does the resources come from? So you've got no energy to do it, but at some point, you know, you decide to do it. And then it's your body's perception of its available resources changes, right? Is that what's happening?
I'm not sure because I haven't done a deep dive into it, but when I was listening to this guy talk about it, it was that it's not about getting to the point where you no longer have to strive to achieve things. It's the actual striving to achieve things that it's associated with. So if something becomes easy to do, you might be getting something out of it, but if like if you're doing something that you enjoy doing and there's not a lot of striving, that doesn't mean you're not accomplishing something, but it's not associated, like the growth in this area is more associated with the ability to persevere despite not wanting to do it. Being able to work through that desire not to do a thing.
And it actually had this thing at the end of it, had some questions, like he hadn't got any answers, so I was going to hit this up to you. Do you think we sort of, the second one, can we train ourselves behaviorally? I guess you're saying yes. Can you
According to this, it's something that can grow and get smaller. And so it's not something that you build up and then suddenly you've got it forever. It sounds like it can shrink as much as it can grow. So you always have the capability of working on it. But also, just as quickly, you can not work on it and it will slowly degrade over time, as will shrink over time as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's kind of like, to me, it's like this idea of momentum. Atomic habits, like you do the thing and it builds up very, very slowly, but it sort of strengthens the longer you do it, kind of like a muscle. And it makes sense that it is a center in your brain because it is like cellular. It's like you're changing it.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, it gets bigger the more you're able to do it, apparently. So
I also like this idea that
it sounds to me like it's just despite it being difficult. Sorry, there you
go. You said it last week, feedback, and we talked a little bit about it. But I really think that this sort of momentum gets amplified through feedback. Like you're doing the thing that you don't like, but like it's so difficult. But if you can find a way to loop it in a way that you can get sort of some consistent progress, like it might be a small step, but you don't know it without the feedback, It's kind of, that's a very important step of this. You can't just blindly be bashing your head against a wall. You need to be able to see the tiny little bit of feedback.
Yeah, well, I mean, being once you've sort of done something that you don't want to do and you've achieved that, it sounds to me like in order to keep that going, it's not like, let's start off like right at the beginning. Let's say it's difficult to get up in the morning, and every day is a struggle to get up in the morning. And let's say that you strive at that is the most difficult thing in your life, is getting up. And let's say that you somehow push past that and you get up in the morning at a time when you don't want to get up, but you do it anyway. Over time, that might get easier, and it may no longer become a thing that is a challenge to you. Now, if that's the case, this part of the brain we're talking about will slowly shrink because that thing is no longer something that's it's not doing the thing.
Yeah.
So you have to find the next thing. So it's the washing. You do I don't want to do the washing, so I make myself do it. And then it's okay.
But that first fundamental thing, right, about getting up. So what's changing there for you? It's the act of doing it consistently. Is that what creates it?
No, it's the act of doing what you don't want to do. You don't want to get up. You know you have to get up. And you make yourself get up despite not wanting to do it.
Yeah.
So that is the thing. And you might continue to do it to where you enjoy getting up early in the morning. But that means then that it's not a bad thing that you now enjoy getting up in the morning, because basically you've got more resources to dedicate to pushing yourself somewhere in some other fashion. So if getting up early in the morning is no longer an issue for you, in order to maintain this thing that they say, is high in professional athletes and all of that type of stuff, then it's finding the next thing. And so it's not what other people think is really difficult. It's what you think is really difficult. So for you, it might be getting up in the morning, doing the washing, doing the dishes, doing your homework, doing the next thing. But, as you go on, if you get better and better at being able to push yourself to do things you don't want to do, it doesn't mean that you stop not wanting to do things. It's the very nature of not wanting to do it is the main point. So you can't talk about growing this area of your brain without talking about doing something you don't want to do.
Yep.
Like if you take the don't want to do out, then you take this out as well.
Yeah, it's amazing, hey? And the next question I have for you is, so last week you said, we were talking just briefly about AI, and offline you showed me this amazing, this guy who uses these clones. He clones Trump's voice and
Oh yes,
Tronald in this D&D thing. Can you
Tronald
describe it to me?
So it's a YouTube channel. It's called AI Guy, and it's Dungeons and Dragons. So it's like if a lot of people have heard of Critical Role. If you've heard of that, someone has basically written a script with all of these characters in the zeitgeist. So you've got Trump, you've got Elon Musk, you've got Gordon Ramsay.
That's right, Ramsay.
As the orc.
And the voices are really quite spot on, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's not just that he's doing the voices; it's he's writing the script and the personality of those things. So my understanding is it's not the script is not written in AI. It's just that the AI part is the voices being able to replicate the voices and stuff. So this guy's written these scripts, and it's like these guys all playing their characters in this Dungeons and Dragons world, and the dungeon master, of course, is Joe Rogan, and it's just hilarious. But also, it's done so well. It's like someone who truly understands. Like if you've watched Dungeons and Dragons stuff, it's like they understand
the geekiness of
it. Dungeons and the geekiness, exactly. So you've got all the geekiness, the descriptions, and
it's like Trump has I have 108 charisma, It's like, no, you don't. It's impossible to have that high charisma.
Like I think it was the first episode, they're at a tavern, and he's a wizard. Trump's a wizard, and because he doesn't really know what he's doing, the first thing he does is he says, "I punched the guy in the face," and he's a wizard punching this big dude, and and essentially he's so weak that the act of him punching him, if it was by the D&D rules, he would have actually healed the guy, but Joe Rogan waived the actual healing factor. And that's it. It's done. It's very layered in terms of the way that the person's written it, which it's brilliantly written, because it's not it's almost like this person understands personality, and he understands the way that people interact and learn, and relationships form. They have disagreements with each other, they dislike each other, they have goes at each other, they make stupid comments, and but relationships form between them, and some of it's a bit ham-fisted, but it doesn't matter at all because it's just so well done. And
it's very clever. But I was wondering, at that time, would you even know how to do that stuff back then? When we talked about it.
What do you mean?
Create voices, cloning voices like that. Do you know what the tools he uses?
I have no idea how to. No.
And that's the other thing that you mentioned was, you said in your workplace, to be cautious around this, you would err on the side of caution. And I wanted to ask you why, because we didn't really go into the why. You said, in your workplace, for instance, it's better to not use the tools and shut it down before.
If you're trying, so it's it depends on what you're trying to use it for. If you're trying to use AI to make money and use it as part of being an entrepreneur of someone on your own, it's probably it's the new. It's not even the things move so fast now. It's not even the new. You've already got people who are jumping in this YouTube channel is an example of that. You've got so many examples of people jumping on AI and coming up with ways. One of the more recent ones that I learned about was the Twitch. There are people who basically are coding their AI on Twitch, and the AI is like someone that they talk to as they're doing all of that, and their personalities and like developing the AI of this thing is pretty interesting. Um, uh, just so yeah, like there's a lot of stuff going on in that space that's really interesting. But if you're in a workplace where like it's more of a workplace where it's about you have to think about the privacy of people's information, you have to think about what you're putting in and the implications of putting that in. Um, to me, it's a bit like this is sort of the problem with the push-pull of technology and us as human beings. You know, we're not smart enough to grapple with all the implications of a technology before we dive in headfirst and just embrace it. Look, like we did that with things like Facebook and the social cost of those things like Facebook and the loss of privacy and this interplay between all of these international bodies, legal implications, loss of data, and we still have data breaches across all the big platforms where people are losing their information. And like there's a whole industry now around cybersecurity. So when you're talking about AI, the main thing to understand about AI is that AI only works if we as people are telling AI whether it's on the right track. So if you're like if you're talking to I'm not sure if we spoke about it in this or I don't remember exactly who I was talking to about it, but AI is like a child, right? And uh, you're trying to teach a child how to learn and grow. There's no morality to what the child knows is right or what's wrong. Um, so if you take a child into an environment and you're saying, I want to teach this child how to learn how to play, learn how to read, you put it in an environment and you're with people who are saying that that's right, that's wrong, that's right, that's wrong, that's right, that's wrong. And then that child has grown to an understanding of something, then you can take that child out of that environment and now they know how to speak language and all of that sort of stuff. Now, the environment that you put it in, if you put that child in an environment where there's lots of hate speech or there's language, like a lot of certain negative language, then that's what goes into it. That's what they're saying is right or wrong or right or wrong, reinforcing. Now, not only have you put that child in there and that environment has influenced the child, but also when you take the child out, you're pulling out all the ideas of the people that have gone into creating that child. So if you put a child in with a bunch of mathematical geniuses and the child goes and takes all of their ideas, or they're great artists, and you put the child in and the child learns all this thing, and then you say, right, you've learned enough, and you pull them out. That child's taking all of those ideas with them. And those parents don't get a say as to whether the child gets to keep those ideas or not. The child has now learned them, and you own the child, and you say, right, I'm going to make some money out of this kid. And you can keep, and that's kind of what's happening is there's this interplay between the environment influences what it thinks and how it operates, but also whatever information you put into it is what it takes away from it. So you've got lots of pieces of artwork that are being created by AI with signatures on them and of artists that it's taken ideas from. And basically it's this big thing about privacy. And when you're doing that in an organization, you have to think about, like some people are using ChatGPT, let's say, to write their emails for them because they want someone to know that they don't think they're very good at how to write a proper message. So they say, right, I want Doris in room 13 whose social security number is this, birth date is this. I want to say, Doris, your birthday has expired on blah blah. I don't know. And then it's turned that information into a sentence and a proper paragraph structure. It's given it to you and you go, great, I'm going to send that email off now. But you've also put in Doris's social security number, date of birth, and all that sort of stuff. And that information's now gone in the public sphere. So Doris hasn't had any say in what information's been put in there. So people don't really think about what information they're putting in and where it's going.
Yeah.
Because it's going into teaching these things, and in order for it to learn, it needs to capture this information.
Yeah, this is my huge concern with it too. So when it started, really with OpenAI, I mean, machine learning's been around forever, and we've talked about it before, and it's been neural networks. But they've never used GPUs to train neural networks before. That was the big shift. And now these GPUs that can handle like trillions of computations per second, and they're just smashing it out. So it's an amazing leap in computing power, just switching to that. And then they trained it on the internet. And they've done it behind a closed model, which you don't know how it works. You don't know where your data is going. It's all online. You have to access it through the cloud. So that was a huge, like, big fat no from me. When you start introducing people, like, transmitting all their secure information over cloud, willy-nilly, they don't know where it's going, what it's doing, but they're happy to get the results back because it's very valuable to them to have an email pre-written for them in your example. So it saves them 20 minutes or something, and they're happy with that risk. So this is where we are. But now I will show... Sorry.
Something else with... No, it's okay. But something else with that as well is that if someone sends... Like, if I send you a photo and you use that, like... when you want to create a piece of artwork around that photo that I sent you of myself, I don't, that information is now out of my hands, and I don't know what's happening with my photo anymore.
And I would say that everything in the public sphere is trainable now. It will be used to train. If it's online and it's public, you can guarantee that it's being used somewhere.
That's right.
You've lost your rights to it now. We're at that point where...
You haven't even had the choice to decide. It's just been decided for you.
Yeah. And they talk about this as the original sin of these large language or whatever networks. Like, they've scraped the internet. The original sin's still there. They say it's not being trained on your data anymore, but the original sin that makes it useful is like the historical amount of data.
It's built upon, it's layers built upon layers, and it still requires user input, because I think some of the examples that have occurred where they've run AI over itself, so as in it's using itself as a reference tool to create new things, it kind of turns into nonsense because it feeds on itself and there's nothing to say what's wrong or right. It still needs there's us who has to say that something's right or wrong or good or bad or left or right.
But also this idea of hallucinations, it's a new word they're using to describe, it'll say something very definitively, but it's not right. It's hallucinating it.
I listened to, there was a really good, I listened to a podcast recently about it. There were these people who did a podcast about it. And it was really interesting how they talked about stuff like that. Yeah. There you go. Sorry.
So that's where we were, ChatGPT 3.5, and now they released ChatGPT 4, and it's amazing leaps and bounds. It's like next level stuff because people have been feeding their info, like you say, into 3.5. It's gotten so much smarter, but surprisingly, the conversation. Actually, I'll give you all you guys an overview of what we're going to talk about. Let's see if this works. So here's sort of a rough guide of what we're going to talk about. And I think the best place to start is an email from Mark Zuckerberg, July 23rd. It's very surprising to me that the founder of Facebook is the one making this conversation and making this decision. But he says here in this letter, it's only a couple of weeks ago, open source. And this is like huge to me. Open source is where the answer is for me. And he's agreeing, he's saying that this is what it is. And he talks about the history, like when we had, when we started with Unix, which was the most robust framework for building computers, it was all behind closed doors, Red Hat, all of this stuff. But the one that emerged as the most popular is Linux, the open source one. And he's saying the same thing with AI. And basically he's released this open, the model they've been training. So you've got GPT 3.5 and 4. The model that competes with GPT-4 now is Llama 3.1. He's released it to the public. It's online now. You can download it on your computer and run it locally. And basically, he's in this letter, he went on to describe some of the same things that you were saying that people were concerned about. He talks to CEOs and government. They want to train their own models. Every organization's different, but also control our own destiny and what we get locked into with a closed vendor. Absolutely. You can't be at the mercy of ChatGPT and OpenAI and, Copilot, because they can change at an instant. You're investing all this money. You need to be in control of it, and you're not with these closed systems. And so, privacy, protect our data. Many organizations handle sensitive data. Absolutely. You can't just chuck this stuff online over cloud APIs. And he's putting this all in his email. It's really quite surprising because they could just shut it down.
It's so hilarious. Him saying that, that's literally what they've been doing.
So that's also my question. What's the intention here? First of all, bravo, because this is a huge thing. Having Llama 3.10 free, and I'm running it now. I'm running it here. I'll show you. Whoops. It's really easy quite easy to do. So you just download the model, and they've got these unrestricted models here. These don't. You can talk about swearing or whatever. Sorry, Dolphin Llama. But then you've downloaded it, and it runs locally, and I've tested it, and you run it. You unplug your internet and it still runs. So it's not sending out anything to create its responses. And they're talking about it as a sort of an incubation process. They're releasing it and they will release the next one. And this is their stance now, that it will be an open source initiative from now on. What's your initial thoughts on that? This is kind of what you have here. And you said Facebook and loss of privacy. This is what's happened. I don't know. It's a huge turnaround. It's very surprising that it's coming from him.
It's coming from him because now he's recognizing that it's not going to make him money anymore, and this is a new way for him to make money. It's not an ethical reason for why he does these things.
How's he making money now? I mean, he talked about his business model. I don't have the full email. He said our business model doesn't benefit from closed models. And he talks about that. And you're right. They're making money from ads. They're making money from us watching the ads through their platform.
But the algorithms, how these algorithms have decided what we do and don't see, aren't they closed models? Aren't they things that we don't have control over, seeing how it's determining why we should see all these right-wing news articles or left-wing news articles or no-wing news articles? Why I keep getting people telling me that the Earth is flat? And Facebook's been terrible with regards to that stuff. It's been massively successful at providing disinformation through its news things. So
to the point where I don't log on to Facebook anymore. The only reason I log on to Instagram is for a community of artists that all post there, and they all exist there. So it's really the only option. There's no other option yet, because that's where all the users are. It's kind of sad because critical mass is there, so you have to.
I guess to me though is what does open source AI actually mean? Okay,
I'll show you. So the example I'll give now, I think I'll just jump to it. So large language models, you know what those are, right? It's kind of like ChatGPT, and this is a large language model, but now you're running it locally. So I've downloaded it. it runs on my computer. So this is actually it here. Oops, this. And it's connecting to Llama 3.1. So this is Facebook's chat. This is their thing. It's running on my computer. I've downloaded it. I can disconnect from the internet, and this will still run. And I've got a crappy sort of example here. I've got our transcript from last episode. Basically, because it's online, you can just do a quick. It's very accessible. Our whole text of what we talked about. It was 2 hours of text, and I just said, okay, your task is to review the provided podcast transcript and create a concise summary. So this is the instructions, and then you can put in your prompts, and then this will spit it out. So this is the summary here. The pendulum analogy, and we were talking about AI generated content and all of this stuff. And then I said, here are some one-liner jokes relating to what we talked about. There's some good ones.
This is something you can't share in the, that program that. Like
well, I have got it in there. This is what I'm saying. This is running on my computer now. So I can put it in a chat. So tell me something. Give me a prompt about what we talked about last week.
Which one of us was funnier?
The two podcast presenters was funnier. Funnier. So this is all running locally. It's not going to the net. There's no data security issues here. I can switch off my net at any time. Based on the transcript, it appears that both Derek and Peter have humorous moments throughout the conversation. However, I'd say that Derek seems to be the slightly more comedic of the two.
Oh, that's not fair. That's not fair.
You know that it's wrong then.
No, I knew that would happen.
Oh, his sarcastic comment about being a comedic genius when discussing their podcast tone. Oh, so it knows stuff that I was saying. It's quite amazing, isn't it? Like, this is all running locally. It's not gone to the net. It's not in a cloud anywhere.
Based on the transcript, is it, Derek? Some specific examples. I can't read it through the.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, it's just an example. So this is running locally, right?
I'm disappointed. I thought I was a comedic genius, and here I am.
That's the thing. You can't say you are, otherwise you're not, right?
Actually, maybe you can. Maybe the AI picks that up. I'm so funny. I'm the funniest. I am very funny. You know what, Derek? You're not funny, but I am very funny.
Yeah,
I'm very interested to know whether it knows just how funny I am. Do you know, AI, how funny I am? We're going to have to find out.
But
so that was just for the next. That was just for the next transcript. By the way.
Yeah, right.
Okay, pick it up.
So
you're supposed to laugh too. That'll add to its flavor flavor analysis. No, that. You're
caught up on that. Your butt hurt, man. Come on, calm down. We got to get back to this.
No, I want to. Yeah, sure.
So that's the example of local. It's running locally. Do you sort of get what it means now? Open source.
Yeah. No, I do. The thing about that.
So like ChatGPT is never going to let you do that. They're never going to let you download their whole model, run it locally. Like, this took some doing. The software is called DIFY, and it's basically a node based, and this is the future. I think this is what we'll see more of. Node based writing. You don't have to know code. You don't have to know a bit of code, but you plug in your LLM here, and then you have different parameters talking to it, and you have different searches that provide it with better information. Like, you have your transcripts as. So what this is called, I'll tell you what this is. The context of this. So it's a knowledge. It's a vector database. I'll just describe that briefly, because even though it was our transcript, the large language models can't even understand words. They have to convert it to these vectors, which are just points of data in a 3D space. And all of our little snippets, chunks, they chunk it into all of these little understandable pieces to it. So it's not readable. It's not even understandable to us. We have to convert it all into a language that it understands. through vectors. So there's quite a lot going on in the background. It's not as simple as text anymore. And like we say, oh, it's got access to everything, but it's not in a way we can ever understand. And we have to, prompt engineering has come about because of this phenomena. We're figuring out how to talk to it because we don't know. Like we've got our language ways but until we see the stuff that it spits out, we don't really know what it's going to do. And we're sort of engineering our prompt.
We don't understand how it figured out. Like when you put that question in there, like we still don't really know how it figured it out.
Yeah, no. There's no that's why I'm saying it's not.
Clearly, it's not a very good model.
That's what I'm saying. And the prompt itself, you have to be more specific. Like funnier, it doesn't really know. Like if you put how many jokes did Peter say versus how many did Derek say, right? And does it even know what a joke is? And so there we're getting into different levels of what you need to describe in your prompt in order to get the right answer. But yeah, so basically it's all running locally, and like ChatGPT is never ever going to let you do that because their business model is to charge per transaction of how many times you do this, and their results are better. So like I go to the Mog Live, and this is what I put in our little summary here. I asked it for a summary of our transcript. It was amazing. The conversation begins with a discussion about a movie reflecting on themes like hang on, sorry, that's not the one. They discuss philosophical topics, science fiction, and the differences. Hang on. No, this isn't the right one. There was one that it nailed. Oh, here it is. Okay, yeah, philosophical and literary references. They delve into philosophical discussions referencing Yeats's poem, The Second Coming, exploring themes of societal cycles, the impact of new technologies on human consciousness, and the balance between different realities. And that's pretty freaking crazy that it got that out of just a transcript that wasn't even very correct. Like I looked at it. It said we're the Mophie, It didn't know what Mog was. What? Mophie.
Mophie. I think I actually am beginning to like that more than the Mog.
We're mofos.
Mophies.
But I mean, like the quality of this compared to what I just showed you, the 20, this is all just boilerplate. I don't know. Maybe we did talk about that stuff and where it came from, but it's not as concise as what, OpenAI's model is doing. So they still have the advantage. But I don't know. That's the thing. But we're not talking, and I might be wrong here. This is what I'm trying to kind of hone in on, is that in terms of being open AI, how is it more open? Like ChatGPT, you put the prompt in, but with this, what makes it open AI apart? Like how does it? Like what you were saying is you don't know how it's figuring this stuff out. Both of them we don't, but with Facebook now you can run it locally, and that's a huge deal because there's no more privacy issues. You can run it in a closed system locally. And you have full control over that. Whereas OpenAI,
so it doesn't feed back.
You've got it up in the net, up in the cloud. They control that system, and they can change it at any point. They can store your data that you send to it at any point. This is like you're running it on a local PC. I know exactly where my data is, and what data I feed to it.
Yeah, but to me that doesn't make it open source. That just means that you have greater control over the privacy of what's going into it and where it's going. Not necessarily what makes you understand how it works or what's gone into its algorithms, how the algorithms have been designed, how they've gone. Like, these things have been created using human knowledge, right? Like, in order for it to figure this stuff out, there's been a heap of stuff that's gone into creating it so that it can do this thing. It doesn't just operate in a vacuum. So can you see what's gone into creating it? What are the things that it's figured out to create the model? And I doubt that, because that's the thing. That's where the money is.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying with this vector database stuff. So if you look at this, it's not even readable. You can't understand it. So the things that you're getting back is not actually in a language we understand. So there's no way you can actually, just inherent in the technology, it uses vectors and nodes and weights, and it's like like looking into a brain. It's kind of like looking into this. This is an example of something else. I wanted to sort of show you like a map of knowledge and using graphs. This is a cool system because this guy Infranodus, he says like the larger the distance. This was kind of moving along to a different topic, but like the larger the distance between two aspects of knowledge means there's a gap in that knowledge, and there's a potential for new ideas. You said you heard of this before.
Yeah, I've seen this type of
Where
stuff.
did you see it?
In my work a long time ago. It was actually it was a very interesting job that I did, and we brought in some people who were at the forefront of this, I guess you could say, because this is going back to 2015. Without going into too much detail, but the main thing even then was like the people who did it couldn't explain it very well. So the clients who were very interested in it, it was never clear to them exactly what made the product so powerful, and it was unsuccessful in terms of being picked up because of how just bad they were at explaining the value in this stuff. Because what it comes down to is nobody explains the importance of the human element in creating these vectors, these models, because you still need something to create those weightings, to identify the associations to some things, to do the corrections and say that, because it might say that these things are associated, but it can be wrong. And that's where the human element comes in to confirm that it's correct. Because it might say, hey, did you know that this person over here is related to this person over here? And you're talking about the gaps in the knowledge. It might be the gaps in the knowledge that's actually like a moderator that says that they're not actually related at all, but something makes them look related. And it's the person element that comes in and says, you're on the right track, you're not on the right track. At least it was back then. I'm not sure how much of the human element is required these days in terms of confirming that. I'd imagine there still is. But this is going back 2015, and they're talking about this like object vector oriented stuff, and I'm using the word stuff and things, but but people never really recognized, like no one could really say, oh, it doesn't need a person involved. Like that was the assumption. Like with this type of stuff, the assumption was, oh, well, we can just use these models and people don't have to be involved, and it'll tell us what's related and what the relationships are. And it was like, no, particularly in a closed model. Not a closed model, in a closed system where you haven't got those outside inputs from the internet, because that's what the internet becomes. The internet becomes this confirmation mechanism, introducing the new ideas and saying what's right and what's wrong, and then adding it to the model. So that version you download can't expand or change or grow, because it has no more external input except from what you put into it, which is that information. So it might be able to grow and learn based on the information you introduce to it in that closed space, but it won't grow as like by the orders of magnitude that we're getting with things like ChatGPT and stuff, where it's all just everything gets dumped into the same thing, and it can, like, even without you saying yes or no, it can just do so much grouping of like information that it can grow its models that way instead of necessarily having to get people to confirm it.
So did you end up using it? Was it something like this, or was it more this? I'm not sure what you...
So which is the... No, it was like that vector diagram you were showing me with the nodes.
I see.
It was like that, and it was determining associations between things. Like like they use these types of models in to identify, the relationships between people is an example where you're determining, they call it the 6 degrees of freedom between everyone.
Separation.
Of freedom.
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
That's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Like that was the kind of the example.
I think this is amazing because we were sort of talking about graphs and new information structures last time, and this is like, I see this as like pretty incredible if you can get it right, because you can see gaps if you've got a body of knowledge correctly mapped, as you say, then it shows like where you have biases and, where you can potentially disrupt things. This is what he's aiming to do. It's a different way of thinking because you're representing knowledge in a different way.
So what this other thing is showing to me, the infranodus? Is
that's the guy that wrote this. He pays for it. I can't actually log in and do more with it. I would love to have got our transcript and done a mind map of the transcript, but you got to pay. It requires a credit card up front. But I was very interested to see which topics, would have more weight compared to others and how it's related, because that's one step I didn't take. I dumped a bunch of stuff that was on my mind related in my head. But
I see.
But it wasn't actually legible. Whereas they are, like, all of this stuff is kind of like how I've dumped it out here. Like, there's threads, like we jumped, even though we did jump, like it's kind of related to what we were talking about, vector databases in large language models, and how we can't see beyond it because it's stored in a different way that we don't understand, similar to this. Like, it's actually not similar to this because this has words there. The vector database just has points. There's no labels or anything.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's still a black box. One funny thing that happened is, like, I asked for one-liners. There was a really good one here. We like philosophers, but with fewer answers and more questionable opinions.
Where's it? Sorry, where's...
Over here. Can you see my thing?
Sorry, I'm looking for it on the thing you sent me. I like philosophers with fewer answers, more questions. That sounds like something you would say.
Which one?
We're like philosophers, but with fewer answers and more questions.
It is. And the other one I liked was the new Apple VR headset is... Oh, hang on, no.
I can almost feel the birds.
Yeah, feel...
I wonder you them all.
Yeah.
That movie had more costume changes and plot twists. If only the dialogue was colourful.
Some of them don't work.
I don't even know where these came from.
This is... Yeah, well, what we talked about. Like, it's related, right? What I was thinking, like, I could... if it could be real time, so if it can transcribe... Like, the use case for me, a good use case for our podcast would be if it could transcribe what we're talking about and come up with one-liners and speak them in Morgan Freeman's voice. You know? So he's like, well...
Yeah.
You have your opinions. And more questionable... questionable answers.
We're like... Or you could do it with Donald Trump. That'll make it sound...
Can you do what's your Donald Trump voice?
No.
You never got one?
Not even gonna try.
Yeah.
Cancel culture's like my Netflix account. One wrong move, and it's. Are you still watching? No, I'm not. Man,
Yeah,
you are so full of one-liners. My question is, did you write these down before you said them, or?
no, this is what AI came up with.
Oh, the AI came up with these as
Yeah.
one-liners
Yeah.
from our stuff.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
That's what I mean. Oh, do you
I
think
thought
I
you
wrote
said
them?
these.
No.
I thought
This
you.
is from AI. That's what I'm
I
saying.
was gonna say yeah. So yeah.
You could come up with these as we're talking about what we're talking about based on our transcript, which is transcribing live, you know.
What, on the main life, we can just switch it off and be on the moon in VR.
Yeah, it's kind of not bad, eh?
It's interesting the thing about the student loans because that doesn't sound like something that would be associated with either one of us have said,
Yeah, it
but
must
from an external source.
must be getting like a joke book or something.
Hmm. So it's about a rough beast. Turns out it was just my cat trying to knock over my ear.
I love that one. And so this is some paintings that I did based on around that poem. And the reason why it was a little bit scattered when we were talking last time, it was a bit all over the place because I didn't really clarify. I just threw it all together. But what we are talking about is consciousness, where you put on a VR headset, you're changing your consciousness. And I was looking at different models of consciousness. I didn't really explain that to you, but different models of awareness. And this guy Yeats, he came up with one model. There's a yogic model of awareness. There's also like Apple's version of what they think your awareness is. And so if you look at their SDK, like their software development kit, they have what describes your world and all the parameters that exist in your world and how the object should exist and like what rules are in place for that world. That's modeling your consciousness, whether you like it or not. And when you put that on your head, you're adopting all of those rules.
I see what you're saying. The feedback process.
Yeah. And I think we're in quite a dark time. These are some paintings I made in 2022, just as the Ukraine war started. And holy crap, it's gotten so much worse in 2 years. Wouldn't you agree? Like Gaza and like all this Trump stuff and
Yeah. It's pretty scary.
like full on. I thought like I'll start putting this stuff into action when it's calmed down, and it never calmed down. It's not like
No.
I didn't want to make it like a darker thing going into like to feeding the darkness by saying something that this is a reflection of what's going on. And I'll play some audio. I wanted to play this because I never finished it, and I was going to put it in a video, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. I don't know if you can hear that. Can you hear it?
No, I can't.
Maybe if you listen to the podcast. Anyway, that's a small excerpt of it. So I was thinking about cycles at that point and how the cycle would end. I was hoping, but the cycle's getting worse. And the only thing I can think of to get us out of it is talking about it and positivity and this sort of discussion that we have, you know, around transparency and being open and as open as we can. And but also I'm interested in your thoughts about that stuff because you are a lateral thinker, one of the rare ones where you can think outside the box. You're not just given what is accepted by the zeitgeist, for instance. You do adopt different models of thinking, and you can entertain different models at once. You don't have to just like, this is how it is,
Mm. Thank you. No, thanks. I appreciate that. Um, uh, in like in terms of what do we do, that's a big issue. It's amazing how when you think about the way that interaction now works with it, sometimes it feels like we've got these players on the stage of the world that uh, it's almost like it's almost like people playing like a real-time strategy game. Like they have the wealth, they have the disconnection from all of the impacts that they create on the world. So much so that it's literally a whole bunch of people sitting in the office playing a real-time strategy game without having to see any of the impact on themselves. And any impact that can come their way is so disconnected or so distant in their mind that it doesn't even bear uh, considering on top of what they're experiencing in the moment. Because I think that they are as much a victim of their of the addictions that we have as anyone else. I mean, you got Elon Musk constantly. You got all these people constantly tweeting. You've got Trump. You've got all of these people are on these social media. They're checking their X's, their Twitters, they're watching YouTube videos. They're doing all the same stuff that we're doing, but they're also making decisions that can get thousands of people killed.
I named this artwork. I forgot to mention. This is called "Slouching Towards Brisbane." In the poem, it said "Slouching towards Bethlehem to be born," talking about this devil basically. This is slouching towards Brisbane. And it's true, like exactly what you say, but this is our collective consciousness now as well. We are all subscribed to this, like very numbing. We will numb ourselves to be
Well, apathy is the key word in this. In that we're all emotionally disconnected from all of this stuff that's happening on around us because we're just searching for the next dopamine hit.
And like I get excited by the fact that Facebook has open sourced this model, but then you point out that it's not really open source. And what's the intention behind it? What is the intention? I was going to ask you.
Adoption. So, I mean, a lot of these platforms, the way that you think of, if you want to talk open source, let's talk Google. Okay, so Apple, they had their technology, which was Macs and all Apple, the Apple platform when they came up with the iPhone, and Apple had their platform, and it wasn't like other businesses could create their own devices. If you wanted Mac, you had to buy an iPhone. But then Google came out with its own version of Android and made that open to other manufacturers to build their own platforms and devices, which was vastly successful.
Do you think there was an element of the same sort of mindset that they were catching up, so they had to do this in order to sort of cut into what Apple had already established?
Yeah, I think also there was a different ethos. They didn't look at it as, I don't think they wanted at that stage to be invested in because they would have had to build the infrastructure to be actually able to create all of the phones and all of that. So they're behind the eight ball there.
They got there in the end with Pixel and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, but the difference between when the Pixels came out, when the iPhone came out, was massively different. Yeah. So and even then the Pixel wouldn't have
competed
when it first came out. Yeah. So, but in that regard, Pixel was just competing with all the other Android platforms, and it didn't have to like you didn't have to drop Samsung or something to continue with Android, so you had that continuity. So as a user, it was more advantageous to be in the Android environment than it would be in Mac, because once you're in Mac, you are constrained to what they say you can do. So if you've got people adopting AI as dictated by Facebook, I guess then you would have all of these different um, all of these different providers making use of that technology in whatever it is that it's creating, which means, sure, as you, Derek, the one person going on and doing your own stuff on your computer, they can't get that data, but if they connect that open source stuff to, like, let's say it becomes part of a technology that's related to Samsung or something like that, then they do make huge amounts of money.
Yep.
So Samsung can then use Llama or whatever it was called, because I've forgotten,
Llama, yeah.
as its base, then it can become hugely profitable via other means. So it's still about money. It's not about ethics. It's just another way of packaging a way of making money.
Yeah, I think the benefit for us as the little guy is that we have at least a competitive open source model now, even though it came from someone that's probably not completely altruistic. We're no longer at the mercy of Microsoft, and Microsoft paid OpenAI to train their model, so they're basically one and the same. It's a monopoly, and now it's not as bad a monopoly. You know, we have at least a competing source of using these tools. I think will change like how we do things fundamentally, because how fast it is. Like, it's stupidly fast. It transcribed 2 hours of text in a few seconds, and like it can summarize that in less than a second. And I can do that for all of our podcasts in like under a minute, and get good descriptions of all of the content that we spent, weeks and weeks researching and, sweating over. It has access to that now. That's why I say everything's online is trainable now, because it will be in the next model. And so...
Just out of focus, sorry. I didn't mean to stop you.
No worries. So I really think content is the most important now. This is the turning point for us as humans. What we decide to say, because the stuff we're saying online, there's a reason why I'm doing this in a public podcast with you, is because it's very important what we talk about. And it's funny because like the last discussion, we were talking about Acolyte, but all of our discussions went to real world events, because we can't really be quiet anymore. It's gotten to the point where like you can't talk about anything without it getting to the real issue. Like there's something deeper going on, and we all feel it. We're all being pressured by external forces and powerlessness, as we said before. So content, our voice is the most important thing. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, it's the thing about it is that what it highlights is that our ideas are not out. That even if our ideas are our own, we can never own them, because as soon as they are put out there, they get taken, and they don't get taken by people. They get taken by technology, which can use that information to add to making money. Ideas is what, like, content, the stuff that we create. That's the stuff that makes people money. It's what, like, if money makes the world go round, and our ideas can no longer be connected to ourselves, and are given to a centralized source that a group has ownership over, then they have your ideas without you having any decision over whether they can do something with it or not.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that it's your idea and Jack's idea and Bob's idea, and it could pull them all together, and it's not going to tell you which one of them it's merged with or how many of those ideas it's created pulled together. It's now like it's a collective consciousness, uh,
I think that's
commercialized.
what it is. I like when I'm talking
It's
about,
commercializing the collective consciousness.
but like I talked about it here, the models of consciousness. You know, what is consciousness to you? That's my question.
Well, what I mean when I say, well, consciousness is a different. What is consciousness is a slightly different question, because there's the idea of the collective conscious, which doesn't really require us to go deep down into explaining what consciousness is, because I mean, people still don't know what that is.
Yeah.
People are still trying to
What's your take on it, though?
come. What's my take on it?
Awareness
I'm
or
not sure.
other words of it.
Well, if I was to talk about just the collective conscious I was talking about, what I'm talking about is all the ideas, all the things that we produce in our brains, the ideas, the thoughts, the way that we form our language, how it's gone about to create these ideas, and as soon as they're coming out of my mouth and it's going onto the screen, I no longer have uh, the I don't have the control of what someone can do with that, because we don't know how much of that information is just instantaneously taken, put into a box, packaged up somewhere, used as an idea, put into a platform, and then added to a whole bunch of other ideas, and then they make money from. So,
I
and it's
mean,
only
let's
getting.
separate the intention, because that is a grey area. Uh, we can't be responsible for the intention of others, but we can be responsible for the content that we create and what we say. You're right, but
Yeah, but the idea is we create content because we want to share it, right?
and it's
Uh,
for my opinion, it is going into this version of a collective consciousness now. That's
yeah,
what AI is essentially doing. It's
yeah,
weeding out all of the what's unnecessary, and like if you're creating, I believe we are creating good content with this stuff. For instance, like what it described in this philosophical, literary references, new technologies, the impact of new technologies on human consciousness. That's pretty freaking spot on to what's happening. No one else is talking about that stuff. So I believe, like, if we're the ones saying this stuff, this will rise to the top of what is stored. You know what I mean? Whether or not it's ill used later on for money, it probably will be. But
well, it depends on how many views it gets, I think.
but
It will
it's
rise
so
to
it's
seven
well, no,
because
it's
part of,
it's it's so
well, it has
regardless
to
of,
weight it, but it has to weight it, right? It has to determine, like, it doesn't know what we're,
it weights
it
it
has to,
based on this. Sorry, I'll show you. Based on the graph, based on what's being not said, the higher stuff that's not being graphed, that's more valuable, right? Not the stuff that's being weighted so strongly that it's in an echo chamber. It's the gap, and we're sort of forming the gap, the unique thinking. It disrupts things. I mean, that's valuable to knowledge. Probably not
no,
to
look,
establishments.
but it had to create those gaps. It has to it has to find associations, and the way that it finds associations is in terms of, gosh, my thing is so totally blurry now. It doesn't want me to be seen. I wonder why it's doing that. Uh, sorry, I'll
Try
just.
the hand thing
Uh,
again. That usually
uh,
works. Where you block off the whole thing. Yeah. It's like too zoomed in. And then slowly bring it back. Ah.
Nope. I think it's just not.
Oh,
bright
there,
enough.
there you go. There. Just found it. You were talking about weightings.
Well, like you're talking about vectors. When you talk about these vectors and associations, it like has to figure out a way that something's associated with something else. So it goes based on what it has to determine a way of saying that these two things are connected. So how it weights it might be based on how much it's said, or like there might be multiple ways that it determines the associations. But like what we're saying, it might be relevant and it might go into, let's say it goes into that model and actually enhances the model, but that doesn't mean that we're going to see any benefit from it, or that it's actually going to find its way into like the collective consciousness. I guess
I'm saying that it 100% is going in, but what we have control of is how good our ideas are, basically, in order for it to be permanent, to be permanently in.
I think. Well, I mean, there's ways of. But how do you say whether it's a good idea or not?
Well, this actually is a good segue to the other point. It's actually what makes us human. So our humanness is our ability to create. So this one's a good book by Konstantin Stanislavski. He invented the Stanislavski method. I think it's called method acting now. Have you heard of this thing? The actor prepares. He's like this Russian. I wanted to ask you some of about this acting stuff because you studied a bit of improv, right?
Yeah.
Did they ever talk about like the source of creating?
I think they did. This is a long time ago, though.
What roughly was your takeaway from it?
Always say yes. Where's the?
Oh, it's over here.
I see.
But for you, just without this.
What is it to be creative?
Yeah, like from an actor's, very specifically to improv actor's point of view. Do they talk about that stuff, or do you have thoughts on that?
Well, creativity to me is the ability to combine disparate ideas into something new, and bearing in mind that what we say is a good idea is a bad idea is subjective, and totally subjective, because like there's been some terrible jokes that I've heard that have been just repeated ad nauseum to the point where it's great now, but that doesn't mean that that's because I thought it was a bad idea, but that didn't make it a bad idea. But anyway, that's just an aside. But in terms of creativity, it's how ideas are combined to create something new, and even newness itself is I would say new to the person creating it, because it's like newness when you put newness into a context, it might not be a new idea. Like there's a fantasy author who had this character who liked to talk about creativity and inspiration and genius and that, and like one of the most important aspects of genius and creativity is timing and to be novel, and for it to be novelty. So it's like if you're the person who gets the idea out there first and got good timing about it, then you could be the person lauded as a genius. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're the only one that came up with the idea, or that. Like, I mean, if you remember the movie The Prestige.
Is that Edward Norton?
No, it's you're thinking it's Christopher Nolan, and it had Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale in it.
Oh, Christian Bale, right.
So it was Scarlett Johansson as well. But in that one, you've actually kind of got an example of that, where the idea is introduced by a particular act is introduced by Christian Bale, but it's made successful by the Hugh Jackman character, because of the showmanship.
Ah,
And like, but that's just an aside to creativity. But creativity is the ability to combine and link ideas, and they could be disparate ideas, out of the box ideas, combined in a way that comes up with something new. And I think some of the best creativity has to have constraints. Constraints provide a box in which to put those ideas. So if you say it has to be a world, like in fact, when you talk about things like Star Wars and you have these creators who think that they don't need to use the lore or the history of those worlds, or they talk about breaking canon or breaking with the way that things have been established, and people complain that that's a bad thing, and they say, well, it's there's nothing wrong with breaking canon and creating something new. Well, there is, because creativity works best when it works within the constraints of the environment that it sits in. You can think outside of it, but there are immutable laws in that makes it work.
how does that relate to like improv acting, for instance?
Well, the improv, because it's all just about what these things are that you combine. So in terms of improv acting, it's like, what do you understand about human behavior? What do you understand about comedy or absurdist comedy? Like, what do you understand about the situation in which you are coming up with an idea in the environment? So so the creative process is how quick you are to grab an idea that someone else introduces. So that's why I always say yes is, some people push their idea, and that's when you've got two people conflicting in terms of introducing ideas, then that breaks away from the ability to grow an idea. So when you've got...
So that initial thing, so yes, that's the mindset, isn't it? That's your collective mindset going in, that you're all actually adding to something. It's different than people competing to say the thing louder. It's actually, we are combining in a way.
Yeah, they say yes and is what the term is. Yeah, and people joke about it, but it is true, because when part of improv is about spontaneous creative expression and storytelling. So it's very difficult to do that if you are putting a negative impact on the relationship between you and the other person. So if you're saying no to a person's idea, that's starting some level of negativity in the environment. But if you take a person's idea, say yes to it, and then think of a way of putting your ideas on top of that, then you grow that idea, and it's more positive as well. Whereas when people think that your idea is crap, and they say, no, we're going to be astronauts, I want us to be astronauts, and dinosaurs don't exist in space, you're like, it's about how you can combine those ideas to come up with something new.
Yeah. So that's the aspect. Behavior. Oh, sorry, go.
Well, your understanding of human behavior is one of the things that makes it even better, because when you understand, because it's acting in a context, it's your expression, your understanding of the way that a person, like when you might create an absurd situation, if you lodge it in something human, then that makes it more relatable to the audience. So you can create an absurd situation but react to it like you're a normal person, which can add to it as well. So it's the combining of ideas is your understanding of human behavior, the taking ideas of other people, and the injecting it of whatever stimulus that you've got, which is either the environment or from what's in your head at the time.
Yeah. And this guy, Stanislavski, so he's talking about more drama, but he's talking about acting as to create the life of a human spirit and express it in a beautiful artistic form. So this is acting like as an art form, and you're creating life. So you're using your physical apparatuses. I love this book, man. It's like it dives deep into this stuff in a way that I really feel that actors have a leg up on us, like we other humans, because we haven't thought about this stuff. And he says, have you come here to serve art and make sacrifices for its sake, or to exploit it for your own personal ends? You know, he's talking about people that have beauty and talent and stuff. You're sacrificing yourself for your art, and that's what makes it good art. It's kind of like really idealistic, but he says the essence of art is not external forms, but it's spiritual content. So there's an aspect of this like spark. Like for me, when I'm asking you about creativity, it's not so much about the framework, but there's like what makes that good idea, you know, that first one for you. It's like a little thing that occurs and you get a tingle, right? Where that's the thing I have to say. What's that?
Well, it's not that. Well, the tingle actually doesn't necessarily come at the point at which you say it. It might come afterwards, because there's the recognition of what you said being a good idea. Because when you're doing these things spontaneously, you're not necessarily knowing that the idea you're going to say is actually going to be a good one. And that can come with experience.
So it's intuition, right?
Yeah. Which is like creativity and intuition are very related. So, you know, because it's creativity, it's an internal process. You know, you use external stimuli, but it's something that occurs within you to create something.
Yeah.
Like, it's conscious. You're consciously doing something, but you're also subconsciously doing stuff as well, because you're not necessarily aware of what's going to come out. It's like, I can't even necessarily put a finger to it, because...
How does it feel then? Like when you're on stage and you nail that moment and you know it worked. What's the feeling behind that?
Well, I didn't do it that well. It's a pretty good feeling, but that's normally because you've got the feedback. Like the feedback is the
laugh,
audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, the laugh or the response. Like
so that's the response you're looking for, isn't it? You know, you said the thing right when you get the laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it's a laugh or sometimes it's also like there's. When I was doing, like, I did courses in it, and I did and that was the fun part, really, because there was just some really great experiences I had doing it, because it's like some of the moments, some of the best stuff, it wasn't just comedy, it was drama as well, or a combining of the two. Like, that's when you're truly doing storytelling, is when you are creating a change. Like, you know, because acting is... It's, you know, you're telling a story, and a story requires a change of state. You're moving from one thing to another thing. So whether it's a revelation, a personal revelation, whether the story itself requires you to go from A to B, or whether you know, there's just some type of a change that occurs. It's not two people just sitting and staring off into the distance.
Yeah, and it relates to painting, and I've got this great book by Diana Mai. She's just a YouTuber, but she is like one of my major heroes in painting. She teaches landscape painting mainly, but she wrote this book, and not many people have it. It's just she published it through Amazon or something. It's on a website, but she's got amazing philosophy straight off the bat. Chapter 1, the essence of creative freedom. And it says, no matter what happens to us, we remain I am. And it's like this really deep philosophy that it's like it unlocks so much when you're just in tune with the I amness of yourself. And it's like, she says, once you label me, like she's quoting this guy, Kierkegaard. Do you know him? He's a philosopher. I'm not familiar with him. But he says, once you label me, you negate me. That's really powerful, isn't it? Like we're so quick to label and quick to categorize, but you're actually doing the opposite by labeling it. You're not finding freedom in that, creative freedom, by using these labels and sort of constricting things. It's the openness, it's the I amness. So you are your own creative source. She goes on, what is it? Yeah, strong intuition, inner knowing. So this is a key for me. What makes us human is this: when you're looking at that spark, it's that thing, that wordless thing, but and like there is some feedback. Actually, in acting, it's probably quicker, isn't it? Acting in front of an audience, whether something's good. But in art, it's kind of hard to know what is good art. But even lower, let's have a look. Following your bliss, she references Joseph Campbell here. Joseph Campbell, he looked at all the yogic texts. I know he's so in tune with spirituality. Bliss is called ananda in yogic terms, but it's not like a hedonistic thing. It's like it's all encompassing spiritual state,
Yeah.
And that's what creativity is. And that's like, she talks about the creative current. And later on, she's got this guy who's coined it as the flow, but it is a current. It's like something that, when you watch a ballet dancer perform a perfect program or a golfer make a swing, all of that's related to what it is to be human, like the dedication. And we talked about it. It relates to this. It relates to the tenacious brain, what goes into doing the difficult thing, all of those hours practicing where you don't want to, dedicating your life to something that you might not see financial reward for. Ballet dancers particularly, they have to brutalize their bodies, to do this thing. You look at their feet, holy crap. But that is what sets us apart, and what is the essence to be. When we see good art, we know that person's dedicated their life to it, and that we can recognize it. It's an intuitive thing, and it all comes together, not in a vacuum, like there's multiple people involved, for instance, in ballet program. But with the actor, it can be one person. With the artist, it can be one person. And I would say to the podcaster as well, it can be
one person.
Two people. But there's the essence of what is the good thing. And I'm going to ask you what that is like to you. In my spiel, it was very sort of random, all over the place. But what's your take on it?
Well, can you sort of take on it?
What is good art?
Oh, that's kind of what was going through my head when I was listening to you, and I was looking at that.
Yeah.
The book, and it's what I think of as good art is not necessarily what is good art. It's just what is good art to me. So, like, whatever I say, whatever definition I give as to the best way to do your creative process and come up with your own thing, what makes a great piece of artwork is only relevant to me. And I think that's always something that should be important to note, because there's plenty of what I consider to be not very good art that is seen as great art. And that's because of what I value. I guess maybe it's what I value in art, to me, that makes good art. So there are things that I look for in art, and that is depth, an understanding of something. Like, it may not be an or at least the perceived understanding of something, because sometimes a person may give expression to a thing, whether it be visually or in writing or in acting or what have you, just because I think that this person is deep or has a deep understanding of something doesn't actually necessarily make it so. But I'm perceiving, to me, looking at this thing and seeing that, to me, it has depth. That's what I'm looking for, is a depth of understanding. Something that makes me want to ask more questions, I guess. So it's like, so this is what it seems to me. What was it one of the things that really frustrates me about some artists and what some people who produce, whether it's a film or artwork or stuff, they say, "Oh, it's important what the viewer sees." What I've created doesn't matter. It's what the viewer sees that's important. And I hate that. It's such a cop out to me. Is that I created this thing, and now it's up to you to decide what I meant by it. Because what they're asking you to do is to add it's like, yes, you can imprint your understanding of a thing onto this artwork that a person's created. But that is, and they will say, well, your understanding is just as valuable as my understanding. And I'm like, no, you created it. You went ahead and you produced this thing with an understanding and an intention. Whether you understood what that intention was or not, this expression came out of you, and I want to know what that intention was. So you know how they say, there's an ambiguous ending to a movie, and the person says, well, you're not supposed to know what the answer is. And it's just like, yeah, I hear that, but what did you think the answer was? And they say, I don't want to tell you because of that. I was like, fair enough, you don't want to tell me. But I bet in your mind when you did this, there was a state. You didn't go in there with an idea of this Schrodinger's cat idea.
What's the
of
example
what they've
film?
created. You could do the Inception, whether at the end it was a dream or not.
In that case, I would say 100% that was his intention. It was so led up to that point being ambiguous.
Yeah, but if you look, there's a whole bunch of... Yeah, but he would have had... even with his intention, right? Even if he wants you to not know, he knows. And he will say he doesn't, but he does.
No, I'd say his intention is for it to be not known in that case. That's a bad example. Give me another example.
But it's no, I don't think it's just a bad example. Just because a person doesn't want you to know what the end result is, doesn't mean that the creator themselves don't have an idea of what it was. Even if he wrote it that way, there's a subconscious part of him that knows what he thinks it is. And so I know that
the fact that it ended on that point means that he wrote it to end there, right? He's not writing Inception, the sequel. We find out what happens. He knows that it's ending there. That's his intention.
Yeah, that's right. His intention is to leave it ambiguous.
Yeah.
But people are people, and a creator is a creator, and a creator always has an idea of what they think an answer is to a question. Even if they ask the question but don't answer it, they have a view as to what the answer is. So he would have an answer. And I believe that with most, all creators. All creators that have a question at the end of whatever it is that they produce, they have an answer that they may keep to themselves, but it's their answer.
So would you say that's good art then? Inception?
I think it's great art, Inception, but at the same time, I still believe he hasn't, but this was just in response to where some people create something and they say, it's up to the viewer to decide, blah, blah, blah.
The other exception I would give to that example is that, someone like Olafa Eliasson, where he creates spaces that you experience. So if it is about the viewer being in an experiential state, that's fine for me. If there's no intentions, if there's no answers, it's about what you're experiencing in these lights or whatever, or mist or whatever, he's got these crazy things going on for you. The art is happening inside you. It's not like on a wall, or it's not like it can't be written about really, because it's an experience.
But to me, those types of things, a person might be, I guess you could say they're being creative in producing an experience, but to me that's not a piece of art.
Well, the good example where I would give is from his work, which I love, is I haven't experienced it, but he creates this it's all one colored light in this room, and then you start to see things in black and white. Like it affects your eyes in a way that you see the world differently, and you don't see the color of a person's skin anymore, and it's like very unifying. You all become like neutral in like this sort of way that you've never experienced. That's pretty powerful, I reckon.
But do you think that that was done intentionally?
I reckon he had a process where he's trying out these things, and he stumbled upon it.
Because it's more that's part of a creative process as well as experimentation. But
like he didn't go and saying, "Oh, I want people to question their racism." You know, he's not saying that. That's my take on it as a black person. But you know, that's why it works for me.
yeah, and look,
whereas
I
other
would say
people
that-
can walk in there and say, "I didn't get any of that because I'm colorblind." You know.
But that's the same thing as a blind person looking at a painting. They don't necessarily get the intended value out of it.
Yeah.
I just think that good artwork has intention behind it, but that doesn't mean that you can't have I guess a transcendental experience from something that was called artwork but was not. Like, this is where it's sort of like, what is good art versus what is art? Like, and as soon as you start expanding upon any idea, in the end you say everything is art. It's just something that was created with the intent.
I really like to differentiate it. I would say not everything is good art. So when we watch a ballet performance,
No,
for instance,
I just meant art. I didn't say good art. I said art. But good art, like, is where it talks about what your perception of it is. To me, good art has intention and depth and understanding injected into something.
understand
And it hopefully makes you think. Like, good art makes you think, or it either makes you think or it gives you an experience, an intended like it has a goal and it gives you an experience with intention. Like, there's an intention behind it.
Yeah, it's all good points, hey. That's pretty much all I wanted to get through. We nailed it. What are we up to?
Yeah.
An hour and 40.
Yeah. All right. Have you got any one-liners?
What's one more liner? I think you read them all out. Let's look at the live ones. I had some in this thing.
I meant creating your own one-liners
No,
for the moment.
I'm bad at that stuff. My therapist says I have FOMO, fear of missing out on all the things I don't need to do online. I don't know, man. So it's bad. Do you have any?
I'd need a
An
subject.
AI?
Creativity is like herpes. Once you've got it, it's hard to get rid of, and it requires antibiotics. No, creativity is like it wasn't herpes that I was trying to think of what the other thing is. What's the thing that you get? A lot of people get. I don't know.
The flu.
No, it was bum stuff. Forgot what it's called.
All right.
It's not a cramps.
Cramps.
I don't.
The Facebook jokes are way worse than the OpenAI jokes. You got work to do. I'm sorry. The Facebook jokes. I'm sure it's got some.
The Facebook jokes? Oh, sorry,
The
you're
llama.
looking at something.
Oh yeah, you can't see. It's in the stream. I can dump it in here. Let's have a look. I'll dump it in here.
What are you dumping in?
The jokes.
Which jokes?
These are the Facebook jokes, so you can read them.
The Facebook jokes? What do you mean the Facebook jokes?
The llama jokes. One sec. There.
Oh, so, like you asked the question in like this is a separate one.
These are for
from the other
one-liners.
one. Oh, right, I
You
see.
can see how bad they are. These
Told my
ones.
therapist I was feeling stuck in a perpetual loop. Now I'm just a shell of my former self.
Oh, that's not a bad one. I've been using this new brain chip, but honestly, it's a real head scratcher. We did talk about brain chips. You said
It's
Elon
just
Musk.
taking jokes it's just taking jokes off the internet based on content.
Well, I
Or maybe
love
it's
that.
not.
If you had Morgan's voice coming in randomly saying that, I would lose my
tried.
shit.
I tried to get on social media, but my algorithm had other plans. Now I'm just stuck in an infinite scroll of self-doubt.
It's not bad, eh? If it's Morgan telling it to you.
Social media is like a bad habit. You can't quit it, but you wish you could delete it. Gosh, there's a lot of loop jokes.
Loop.
There's a lot of
Oh,
recursion
we go.
jokes.
Chris is here. The thing is Charles. The thing.
The thing is Charles
thing
the
you're
thing.
talking about.
The end thing you're talking about.
Is Deckard a replicant? Yeah. This is exactly what we were talking about. Yeah, go on, Peter. You were saying your thought.
Oh, the question of the unknown, like the people have the answer to it.
Yeah. That's a good example.
Well,
Deckard.
is Charles a thing? Now I know what you're talking about. Is Charles a thing? Well, interesting you should say that, bro, because apparently someone picked up on something in the thing, and that is that when he hands the guy something to drink, he smiles because he knows that it is a thing, because what he handed him was not alcohol but petrol, gasoline, and the thing, and he drank it anyway.
I haven't seen the thing.
Oh, really?
What year was that made?
The 80s.
80s.
84. The good old 80s.
Worth it. Who's acting it?
It's got Kurt Douglas in it.
Ah, right.
It's
82.
John Carpenter.
Oh, it's Carpenter, of course. I have to watch it.
It's got absolutely.
Add it to the list
music.
of Mogs you'll never watch.
Yeah.
That could have been one, actually, because you've seen it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
What about Deckard?
Oh,
Blade Runner.
Deckard, Blade Runner. Whether he's a replicant or not. People.
What's your game? What's your take?
Well, people say that he is a replicant because he dreamed about the unicorn in the extended scenes, and
It changes everything, doesn't it? Seeing the
and the
extended
guy
cut.
did the origami of the.
And there's no way, you know.
Because he knew, but he knew that he had that dream, which means the dream was an implanted thing. Which means
Yeah. But that changed everything. But before that, we didn't know, right?
Well, before then, wasn't there? It was less ambiguous. He was driving off in the countryside with the.
I didn't see the original
girl.
cut though. Was he just driving off with her?
Yeah, this is when they had the voiceover. He drove off with the girl, and that apparently she had a full lifespan instead of like the 2 years or something like that.
Oh, so it's an absolutely different ending.
Absolutely, completely different ending. Yeah,
It's funny.
yeah, that's it. And those are instances where it's just like the those are ones where the ending is ambiguous because you've got 5 different people saying what the ending should be, and it just depends on which one of them put out the version.
Hey, I watched. Here, Chris. Sorry, half listening. Killing a Titan.
He's playing Elite Dangerous.
Ah, right. Hey, are you excited for the new Space Hulk? What is it? Warhammer game? Space Marines?
Space Marines 2. Yeah, I have no idea what's in it.
It looked
It just seems
great.
to
I
be
saw a
making
Jack
the
Fried's
rounds.
video. Looks
Oh, okay.
stunning. Like gore. You would gore galore.
Oh, what? I'd love it, huh?
Yeah, just
I'd
the
love it.
way
I'd
it's
do right
very
into it.
visceral gore.
So, are you going to see Alien Romulus?
I'll wait for it to download. I think I won't see it in cinema. Are you keen on it?
Yeah, I am.
I
I'm
think
keen to
Ridley
see it.
Scott has said Deckard was a replicant, but I think
Ridley
most
Scott is a weird guy
don't
because
like the idea.
he can be
He
like
he's in
so.
the new Alien, right? Romulus.
No, I don't. No, I think he was like a producer or something.
Oh.
But he like Ridley Scott like has he's a bit like George Lucas in some regards, you know, some terrible ideas, some really interesting questions and some terrible ideas, but great cinematography.
Oh man, I love Gladiator. Aliens. He's done enough good stuff to make up for all the experiments.
So, yeah, there's been a lot of experiments. What was what was that more recent film that he came out with? Can't remember.
Let's have a
Yeah.
look. Ridley Scott.
He did. What did you think? Did you watch any of the like Prometheus or Alien Covenant?
I like Prometheus. I just like the vibe of it. I'm a vibe guy.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? Like I know exactly what you're talking about. It is like there's something beautiful about it, and yet so utterly stupid about it
No,
as
well, you
well.
don't look too close, is the thing. You can't look too
Well,
close.
you literally have to not be wearing glasses and be like blind without your glasses to not look too close at some of the stupidity in that.
So he's a producer of Romulus. Where's his directing thing? They've changed IMDb again. Director. Oh, Napoleon.
Napoleon, that's the one. People weren't too thrilled.
Alien Covenant. I can't remember. What was going on with that?
That's where they met um, David again, and he had
Ah, yeah, yeah.
wiped out the city or something and killed the main character of Prometheus.
He did The Martian. That was great.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh.
Uh,
I think he's a great look. I think he's a great director. I just don't think he's a great like. I don't know.
Black Hawk
Great
Down.
writer.
Holy crap. Hannibal. Mm.
Oh, did he do Hannibal? Hannibal.
Thelma and Louise. Didn't know that.
Really?
Oh. Didn't know that. Alien, of course. Blade Runner.
I watched a video about Alien recently about the cinematography in it. It's
Yeah?
just like the blocking, the like the placement of characters, and like there's some really great stuff in
It's
it.
well
Just
rehearsed, right? It was one of those films where they rehearsed a lot. It feels like.
it was well the I think there was a bit of improv in there too, but like there was like two cameras at time, like you used two cameras for certain shots at times, so that it was like could cut between them. Did a lot of blocking where multiple characters in the same shot, one in the background and the front, and things like one will be talking, but the person talking is actually blurred out, and it's the person that they're talking to that is in focus. So you're seeing their reaction to the talking, and then when the other person starts talking, the person reacting is now in focus. So it's like
Yeah.
swaps, and it's just really interesting. Like
I
there's
love
all
that
the
stuff,
stuff in
eh?
it that I wasn't even aware of. Yeah.
Who was a cinematographer? It's so hard to get anything from IMDb now.
Why is that?
Where's the
Like, is it hard?
cinematographer stored? Used to be just like worked on, and you have the full list of. Can you find out?
Are you excited for Rings
All
of-
cast and crew. Here we go. Hang on, I need to find this out before I forget.
There's another Tron movie coming out.
Derek Van Lint, director of photography. Hey, he's a Derek.
Good on you, Derek.
What else has he done? Not much.
Did you see this trailer for Skeleton Crew?
What's that?
it's the next Star Wars rubbish.
Oh, right. Is it a series or a movie? TV series? It's a kids thing, is it? Is it meant to be for kids?
Uh, yeah, it kind of looks like Goonies of the Star Wars universe.
Jude Law, though. That's cool.
Yeah, well, we had some really class action actors in the Acolyte. Jerry Goldsmith
Did he do the music?
for Alien, yeah.
No, I thought we were talking about Skeleton Crew. I was like, what the hell? Fucking hell. Did he write a score and just have it sitting
I
around?
want to see what he did. Jerry Goldsmith's our favorite composer. Known for LA Confidential, Star Trek First Contact, Boys from Brazil, Congo. He did Congo?
Congo is good.
Was it?
The music, yeah. In the
I don't
jungle
remember that.
with the monkeys. This is all like jungle music. Hey, I watched House of
Rambo.
Dragon season 2. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't seen any of the House of Dragon.
Oh man, it's night and day compared to the Acolyte. The writing, I'd say there's still like, it's they're pumping it out. They have to make 10 episodes or whatever it is, but it's so much better. I wish we watched that instead. The Acolyte. It's just like, holy crap, man.
Well, we can if you like.
I've already watched it. You really do.
Fair enough. Did he? He did the music to The Mummy.
Oh, the Mummy. That's nice.
I'm just confirming that. Yeah. Jeez. God, he's just prolific as anything. Babe. Composer of unused music. The Burbs. Conductor, score producer. Uncredited. Inner Space, conductor, uncredited. These are all conductors, not necessarily composer.
No, you have to look at composer.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's got different tabs now. It's annoying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Jerry. Oh, look.
Why did it say he was a conductor? Oh,
I know. Why would they put it first as well? They put
Yeah.
producer first. It's done.
Yeah. It's like, what?
Composer, Gremlins, Star Trek.
I don't
Uh,
composer. That's it.
a lot of really bad films. Yeah, The Mummy's there. Mulan. Didn't know that.
Gremlins, A Christmas Nightmare. Was a short.
I liked all the Gremlins films. They're my mugs, definitely. Air Force
Air
One,
Force. Yeah.
LA Confidential.
Chain Reaction.
I wouldn't say all of these are very memorable. Like, I couldn't tell you the theme
No, me either.
from Air Force One.
Dennis the Menace.
I can't remember that. I don't know.
I don't. Rambo the Rescue. Video composer. Poltergeist 2, the other side. Supergirl.
Yeah, so I gave like a huge thing on what I was sort of thinking about this week. What have you been thinking about?
What?
Just in general. Like, I had all this stuff. I gave my train of thought about AI. But
Well, I kind of spoke a bit about it because some of the stuff that I've been just
Yeah.
looking into, I think I spoke about, but I can't remember what it was now. It's just some of the cinematography of the Alien was one of the things I was looking at, and
Yeah.
Not much.
Any other good mind hacks?
Don't don't spend all your time watching media.
Yeah,
That's a good mind hack.
100%. Yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna check my watch history. Um, because a few things that I kind of keep on top of is like around stuff in science. So like if there's anything related to cosmology, that type of thing. Occasionally keep up with some of the stuff with to do with Star Wars for some stupid reason. I don't know why. Like Kathleen Kennedy wanting
Comes
to
up on
quit,
your
but she
feed now.
can't.
Hey, it's so hard to get out of
Yeah.
it. Actually, there's a funny thing that my brother showed me about the Acolyte. It was this guy who does deep fakes. He's got
Oh
Qui-Gon
yeah.
and Obi-Wan and Anakin all deep faked reacting to the Acolyte. It's pretty good, and he uses the voices as well, similar to what we saw
All
with.
right.
But
Yeah.
it's like, when Osha says hello, he goes, Obi-Wan goes, no, it's hello there.
Actually, there is something. Have you ever seen The Ninth Gate?
Yeah. Oh, that old film, Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that film. I want to watch that again.
Pretty dark film.
It's not. Well, it's a little dark. Not as dark as some movies.
Was that Fincher? No.
Polanski.
Oh, Roman Polanski. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
He
that
is
guy.
the father of, like, dark. Twisted.
Well, I think he just is dark,
Yeah.
dark and twisted. That guy.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, I watched American Psycho for the first time recently as well.
Oh, you hadn't
That was
seen it before?
no.
What do you reckon?
It was good. It was good. It was interesting that people. Oh, my brother. It's not better, bro. The book is not better. I'm sorry, but the Club Dumas book is not better. I don't think it is. Like the whole Three Musketeers side thing, just like got really confusing, and like the red herring about it. It's just like. Oh, good. Thank you. That's true. Yes, art, man. Well done.
I don't know. I haven't read the book.
It's all right. Oh, it's good. Like I enjoyed the book, but I found it a bit confusing at the end. Um, because it just like jumped to this stuff. Um, it was
Like,
like a
about the
red
movie.
herring.
Oh, right.
Um, what was I looking at? I'm getting myself lost now.
You said Ninth Gate, but also you were saying something about American Psycho.
Yeah. Yeah, just I just was watching for the
No,
first
you
time.
said surprise. I'm
That's
surprised
a,
people.
they looked at it and they complained that it was misogynistic.
That's the whole point, eh?
And it's just like that's the whole point. Like
It's like doing the worst of the worst. He's doing everything possible.
yeah, yeah. Well, he's like yeah, I've like some of the interviews about that, like him talking about it and that he modeled his character off of Tom Cruise.
Sorry, what? He modeled it after Tom Cruise,
Yeah, yeah.
Christian Bale, or the director.
Yeah, Christian Bale modeled like his acting.
Did you
off
see that he
of
was in the closing
character.
ceremony, of the Olympics?
No,
He did
who?
like this Mission Impossible.
Tom-
Tom Cruise.
Oh, really?
He dove off the stadium and he grabbed the flag and he flew it to America. It's so crazy. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that sounds like him. And then he
Okay.
hobbled.
Heading upstairs, guys. 8 million in Titan killing credits. That'll get me a sticker for my ship.
Getting it.
Anti-Xeno guys. 10 to 15 people in there.
He's talking. It's not. He's not talking about us.
It's the what is it?
It's the
Elite Dangerous.
Elite Dangerous, yeah.
That's a lot of credits, eh?
Um, mm,
Is it
yeah.
just you mentioned that it was quite grindy, right?
Yeah, they've recently made changes to it to make it a lot more accessible to people.
Oh yeah.
Like it's not as grainy as it used to be. Um, yeah, so I was looking that up. Ninth game, American Psycho. Um, I've been looking at this game. I don't know why there's morbid fascination with popular games that kind of like have you heard of Helldivers 2?
Mm. Chris says,
Like
"Did
it's
you
been
update
coming
your
up.
Python too? Is that a ship or something?"
I engineered. I just engineered some of it that I could, like the FSD range, uh, while I was in the thing, and then I just went back to your spaceship, your thingamajiggy.
All right.
Um,
Sorry, you're saying. Can't remember.
it was really interesting. I've been following this game,
Oh, sorry,
Helldivers
hell no.
2.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah, which is just like there's been a real uproar about stuff that's been made, changes that have been made by the devs, and everyone's like wondering why the hell they're doing it.
Oh man, I reckon this timeline we're in is the worst timeline in terms of that
It's
stuff.
so bad.
I like, for
Yeah,
instance, I love the House of the Dragon stuff, and as soon as I pop online, which I knew was going to be fire, sure enough, there was fire.
yeah, people are just too hyped up about absolutely everything because it's what gets clicks.
Yeah.
Like the negativity, it's just that it's like everyone, they're just echo chambers just form instantaneously now.
I only just noticed
Um,
that mushroom is moving behind Derek. Creepy. Yeah, I love my mushrooms.
yeah.
Thanks, Chris. See ya. He says laters.
Bye,
Oh,
bro.
talk about it later. Night, guys. Yep. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just becomes like a full on, becomes like fashionable to say the thing, but have a thought for yourself first, you know? Can't formulate your own opinion before you just sort of borrow someone else's and then amplify it.
Yeah. I've come to the conclusion that I must be autistic.
Why?
Because I um
Because it's popular to be autistic
yeah.
on the spectrum. Neurodiverse, it's referred to now.
It's not like it does. I'm not even sure I know what any of it means anymore. Like I get why they changed some of the definitions, but what they changed it to seems to be even less, like more vague. Like there's, autism used to mean one thing, now it's a spectrum and it's like a massive spectrum. It's just like everything falls under.
Yeah. Yep, yep, yep. Oh,
So
were you being honest? Do you think you are?
I think it's possible,
All right.
but I'm
Is
not
it something
sure.
you want to talk about on stream? We're still live.
Yeah, hi everyone. Well, um, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's fine that you are. Um,
Well, it's in the transcripts now. It's in the
I mean, I was
zeitgeist.
talking about it to my
It's the link
therapist.
between two ideas now.
It is, but I was talking about my therapist. I didn't realize how much of it is just being aware of behaviors, because your behaviors, if you are, um, neurodiverse, will be different. They will be
Mm.
very sort of dependent on environmental factors and other things that we don't, you know, um, people that are not neurodiverse have to think about. So it's like it is an awareness thing, I think, to be labeled as that and to say yes, I am that, and this is what it means for me. You have to actually say, because it's so different for everyone. Um,
Yeah, and I don't like really know what the criteria is, the proper criteria, because this is a thing everyone self-diagnoses now on these things that everyone's neurodiverse and everyone like you can't be smart without being autistic or neurodiverse now.
Yeah.
Or it's
But if you're properly
yeah.
diagnosed, there's a diagnosis process, isn't there?
Yeah, but then it comes down to who does the diagnosis. Some people aren't even qualified and they're allowed to provide diagnoses for things. So, and sometimes people just get diagnosed so that it gives them a justification for why they do what they do. Um,
I think when it comes to like behavioral things, especially if it keeps popping up for you, that's when it becomes a point where, okay, there's a this thing keeps on occurring in my life because of my behavior. What is the cause of that behavior? If it's not something that I'm aware of, then you can go to someone to diagnose it for you, and then it can help you. But if you're just sort of seeking like out, saying that, oh, okay, I want to justify my behavior is because this can be the only option. I looked it up online, and all the Reddit articles say that I am. Then that's probably not the best. But if you're seeking
yeah.
help, there's options for that. You know.
Yeah. And the other thing as well is, but there's like if you're seeking an explanation for behavior, that doesn't necessarily relate to just autism. It could be anything. Like there's lots of different reasons, and like a lack of awareness of behavior doesn't necessarily mean autism. It could be a whole bunch of things. It could be borderline personality disorder, ADHD. It could be none of the above.
Mm.
Trauma, PTSD. It could be all kinds of things. It could be low IQ. You know. Um,
It's the problem. As I think we've talked about this before. Is the problem of the diagnosis? Hey, the diagnosis is very sort of, but it's a powerful thing because it's a person in power giving it to you. Respected doctor or
mm,
whatever that has spent their life. But it's also very. It's like we actually talked about in the podcast. By labeling it, you're limiting that person to that diagnosis, and you become
yeah.
the living embodiment of that diagnosis from that point on. So sometimes you're better off
And
without it.
well, yeah, and if if they're still defining things, they haven't like they're changing the definitions of things, which they do. They change the criteria by which a person is diagnosed. If a person's diagnosed and then they change the criteria, do they go for another diagnosis or do they just stay with what they were diagnosed as? You've got a lot of people who've been diagnosed with ADHD that don't necessarily have it. Um, there's a lot of similarities of behaviors between a lot of these different diagnoses in psychology. Um,
And I see the other side of it where they needed something. They needed some sort of
yeah,
concrete manual because there were very sick people with um, very prominent mental illnesses. So they needed a
yeah,
way to define it, but where it gets grey
yeah.
is
It's
like
just not perfect.
it's never going to be perfect sort of thing. But they needed
No.
something.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about behaviors, it's like an external demonstration of something. Like when you're talking about other type of medical issues, there's, depending on what it is, I mean, you do have a lot of idiopathic disorders, which are things where basically you exhibit all the signs of something, but there's no discernible source. Like, you know, there's, that's what idiopathic means, I believe. It's like, it's I don't know the exact definition, but like, doesn't have a source. Like, it's unclear as to why or what it is, but it's in this area. Like you can have idiopathic sleep apnea, I think, and idiopathic.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, there's a lot of like whenever you see a disorder that has idiopathic, I think is the term. Um, it means what is it? It means relating or denoting any disease or condition which arises spontaneously or for which the cause is unknown. So you'll often, like if a person talks about certain disorders or disease that is idiopathic, that's what it means.
They made it up. Is that what
Yeah, you know, that's psychosomatic. I think it's cool. Uh,
I was
um,
just joking.
yeah. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. That sounds like fun. But what I mean is like a lot of medical disorders, you know, there's a clearly definable thing that's happening. But when you come to behavioral disorders, there's probably some signs in the brain, but not necessarily like there are some things that are clearly brain related, but when it comes down to the demonstration of behaviors and it's not always cut and dry.
Yeah, and it also comes down to what, what stage of that story you're in as well. Is it harming you, harming your life, hindering your existence? Then you have to act on it with whatever tools you have. If medicine has some drugs you can be on that help you, then yeah, be on them. I didn't see any, reason to be stigmatized for for wanting to help yourself. I think a lot of people are afraid to talk about this stuff because.
Oh yeah, I think it's getting a little bit better than what it used to be. It's a bit more in public consciousness, things like depression, anxiety, um, autism, ADHD, as well as medications, people being on medications and seeing psychiatrists, psychologists, all of that stuff. It's getting a bit more normalized now than it used to be. Hell, it seems to me like half the population is on some type of anti-anxiety or antidepressant. And that's not a criticism. It's just like seems to be what the go-to is.
Well, that's a reflection of our society. I honestly believe that. This is what we have decided for ourselves also. It's a truism because we can at any time burn all our phones, and imagine how much better our lives would be if we all did that, but we do not.
We do not. Well, it's also like, well, with regards to that, also a lot of our, like people say, oh, the only reason I have Facebook is to organize meetups and things like that, and there's like some people base their social environment around the phone and the device and the thing, like they're on WhatsApp or Viber or Messenger, or they've chosen a platform and that's what they communicate with other people. So if they, people say they haven't seen them since they left Twitter, it's like you can burn your phone, but I think part of the reason you don't is because of the loss of social contact that you fear.
No, but imagine, for instance, like I met this guy at this Newtown market. He's been around in Newtown since the 80s. He was saying how different it was back then because there was no phones. Everyone was congregating and creating this massive cultural hub where people he was saying these crazy things like it was a porn theater. The town hall used to be a porn theater. You don't even consider that stuff now. People would go there and hang out and do all this crazy stuff,
Yeah.
It's never going to happen now, ever. And
not sure if I'm too worried about that with relation to porn theaters.
But this guy was like a punk, so there was all these music venues and all these crazy bars and all of this stuff. We would go back to that if we had some EMP device that killed all technology that we could carry with us. It wouldn't work outside. We would have to go back to that because
but we'd also lose all our money.
Cash, back to cash.
Where do you get the cash?
ATMs, tellers, bank tellers.
Are you talking about EMPs knocking out the technology?
No, bank tellers. No, I'm saying some technology when we're outside. You can't.
Oh, okay. Right. If we went back to analog. Yeah.
Dumb phones. Just make a call, send a text.
We've all got Nokias again.
Nokias. It'd be back in the 90s. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
And then it comes down to things like the resurgence of print, because print starts to matter, you know. And then we have to go and get our magazine or newsprint and start doing that again. How good would that be? I think it's amazing, because then you've got proper outlets, people who are investing in journalism again. It actually benefits a lot of things. There's a flow down effect to killing off the phones.
Well, I think the main thing, like, there's a few things with that. One is you want to decentralize some of these monopolies. You want to pull apart some of these monopolies, which is like when we're talking about journalism and that type of stuff. I think.
But remember street press? Independent little things, they just
Magazines.
but they have these ads provided by the local business, really. They're funded by it. And they just chuck them on the street, and then you get all your gigs from that, and like you're all on the same page, because you're all once a week you're picking up a thing, and you already know. It's really community building stuff like that we don't do anymore because of our phones.
Mm. Well, we all do that stuff online now,
But it's not
in one
as
way or
it's
another.
not as like you say centralized. It's like so weird. My online universe is so different to your online universe. We don't have a cross, for instance.
Mm.
Whereas all those people are getting the same thing. They all know that same thing, and they turn up to that gig because it's written there.
Well,
It's the
the
best
argument
place to be on a Friday, you know?
the argument for that against that is that when you have a community, that dictates how, um, like, when you have the internet, you can find like-minded people in any area, like any interest area. But in a small community, in a city or in a town, you are reliant on what exists in that area. So if you have interests outside of that, it's harder for you to sort of find your people.
I'm talking about big cities, though, like Brisbane,
Even
Sydney.
then, even then, even then, it can be.
But how is that a downside, having a community that, like having a more centralized community? How is that a downside? Like
A
where
centralized
you're
community.
all picking up the news, we all used to pick up, I don't know if you did, but I did. I used to pick up the street press. And for instance, everyone that I spoke to knew about something written there because we all had that and we were all keen on that thing. And so we all go. It's kind of
Mm.
centralized, right? Centralized little community. What's the downside to that? I don't see one.
Well, the downside to that is population base. Like, there's a reduced population of people in that, and like you, the difference is that you have to go to it rather than it comes to you, which is what happens with the internet. Now, I'm not saying that the internet is better, because I think that the main factor over anything is, the human factor of actually physically seeing people and interacting with them, and that when you reduce choice, um, it makes things easier on the brain, for one thing. Um, but also because it's actually less centralized, is what I'm saying. When you're seeing people face to face, it means that you have groups that have like, you haven't got as strong a zeitgeist, or whatever you want to call it, where everyone's talking about Helldivers 2 and saying the same thing, or everyone's saying the same thing about the Acolyte, or it's where you have these groups that can formulate their own opinions, but they're allowed to do so without, like, the mainstream influencing their viewpoints. It's
Mm.
more decentralized,
Well,
because
it was a
your
subculture.
viewpoints, yeah, the subcultures, and they're influenced by the group that you're in, rather than by the influencers. Like, your influencers are reviewers on these magazines, or television, or the people that you're actually seeing and speaking to. Whereas now our viewpoints aren't dictated to by our friendship groups, they're dictated to by the YouTubers and the influencers and, the Twitter,
But
all
what's
of these
funny about that
opinions.
also is on that note, because you said the influence is the journal or whatever, the person that writes. There's quite a barrier to get into that position, which is not existent online. Anyone can write about anything. It's so easy to just rise to fame because you're saying the loudest thing. Whereas if you're writing for a column in a small magazine, you got to dedicate a fair amount of your life to doing that thing and like being on time and being responsible, and like you'll get kicked out if you start writing crap. Like people won't read your articles, and like they will say this guy's not the man for the job, and like
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I could argue two sides on that. One is that you have to work harder to get into the magazine. True. That doesn't that is not necessarily a reflection of how good you are as a journalist. Some of these magazines may not value so much how good you are as a journalist as how well you are at writing, how good you are at writing, or your opinions are things that people are interested in, or that type of thing. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your view is a stronger reflection of like, or that you're better researched. You could have, but because there's less of you, then your views can be heard more. Whereas in terms of the internet, there's so much out there that a few people rise to the surface, and
I mean, that's
that
why
is
Reddit was genius, because you've got the tick option and everything gets risen, with Reddit. It's like you vote on everything. And that was one of the first to do that, sort of 4chan and all that stuff.
Well, you got that with YouTube as well, with the thumbs up,
Thumbs up,
the like and all of that stuff. I mean, people still do it. It's just it's this. I don't think it's changed. Like, I don't think our opinions have become less. I think we're just as stupid as we've always been, and we're just as influenced as by people's opinions that aren't necessarily good as we've always been. Because, like, at least for the last 200 years, because you've had like the major newspapers, like when you look at the way that journalists operated back then, doesn't necessarily mean that these journalists were actually doing a good job. There's a podcast, the podcast The Dollop.
Yep.
They do another thing with that, which they call what is it? The Pastimes. I think it was called Pastimes, where they pull a magazine out of different periods, like going back from 1950, 1970, 1800s, all of these different time periods, and you listen to the stuff that's coming out of these articles, and they're full of inaccuracies, and like it sounds like it could have come out of Twitter, the stuff.
Yeah.
It's not as vastly different from what we get now, except that it was the only paper and it was the thing that everyone was waiting to pick up to get their gossip and their information. So now I think the difference is that...
Well, I'm not talking about like the Courier Mail, for instance. Or I'm talking about street press. It's very, very specific for a subculture to have a community. I don't know. It's sort of like it's like a Bible, because you had every event that was there. It's not like that could be lied about because the events existed. It's not like... And the reviews were from people that were at the events, It's kind of like there's a level of truth there to those articles. It's not like, I don't know what the example from the 50s is in Australia. Courier Mail, I guess.
Yeah, I think for me, the difference really, the thing that takes away the anxiety and the stress from what we have now is that it's not about it being better quality. I don't think it's about it being better quality. I don't think it's about being more integrity, or that people's opinions were better. I think it's just that it was simpler, that it was more based around interpersonal interaction, um, and we weren't deluged with information, so to the point where we weren't given the opportunity to process it. Like when you've got your magazine, there's processing, you get processing time, whether it's being sitting on the bus or, there are periods where you're not looking at something for information. Like when you got your phone, you're constantly getting data in your brain without any time to process it. And I think that's the problem, and that's why we have short attention spans. That's why you can change the news cycle, and that's why Trump. How we're talking about cancel culture and like what's the way to fight it is by just continuing to do it. It's because people are continuously deluging their brains with information, so much so that nothing significantly matters. So there's no processing time. There's just the next piece of data, the next piece of dopamine, without any need to process it.
And it's the other addition to that is it's accelerating very, very rapidly. So why I present it in this way, and I'll show it again. I picked this up from YouTube. Some guy did this, and it's the best way of organizing information to me. We have such an ability now, because our brains have been rewired, to absorb so much if it's presented in a way that has relationships, that we can draw relationships. So it can be presented like this. It doesn't make any sense seeing it like this, but when you dive in, you know exactly what this is now because we talked about it and I've made some notes, and this is wired into our brains now. We all remember this. It's kind of how our brains work now. It wouldn't happen back, in the 50s when we were reading newspapers. We weren't thinking like this. But now we're so used to these little bits and pieces, stuff being presented in chunks and different different little anecdotes. We get a tweet from someone relating to this tweet, and so many people liked that tweet or this story. It's like tiny little chunks. We're so used to that now. This is how we receive information. So this is the model now that works. It's funny.
Well, that vector structure that you were showing to me in there is not too dissimilar to that. It's just more visual.
Yep.
There's just, we've built upon it. Like you look at these things on the surface, it's like the reason that we look at that whole visual you had and it makes sense to us is because we built it, or you built it, so it makes sense to you. Whereas this is pre-built, so we didn't build it, so it doesn't make sense to us. We can just see relationships. But you build that, you know what the sections are, and then like you can understand these things, but you have to delve in to read it and pull it apart.
Because I read this, there was a YouTube thing, something about PowerPoint and how we should think about PowerPoint differently. He's saying, our attention can only hold 6 things, for instance, where people have 20 items on their slides, but humans can only store 6 things. But I would argue that we can store so many things at a glance, and our brains are very good at that. But PowerPoints are just documents. We make them as documents to be submitted after the fact, They're not visual like this, where I can zoom around, and PowerPoint is like printed out and stored as a record, That's why they're like that.
The reason they talk about things like 6 things is because it's about chunking information. We can remember 6 things chunked into 6 things, chunked into 6 things. Like that's why you can build upon concepts. When we were talking before, like I'll go all the way back to when we're talking about that one phrase of looking
exotic insect.
Exotic insect. I like that, going back to that one, because of just those words are chunks of information, chunk within information, chunk within information. So once you grab that, you can pull it apart and then get into those chunks and pull it apart. But you do need to pull those pieces together in order to chunk it. You can't just look at a chunk and know exactly what it is. So like I can't look at this visual that you've got and immediately know what I'm looking at.
No. You have to, yeah. You have to do what we did. But this is the unique thing about the podcast era, is that we have this ability now. We're very used to listening in the background and like switching on to our attention when we need to. It's funny because we're multitasking as well when we listen to the podcast. Like I don't sit at home and just watch the thing. I'm sort of like got it in the background. But like this is how our brains work now. We're being absorbed, like you say, absorbing all this information constantly. And like we're so wired for it that and it's accelerating so fast. We have to do this to keep up is the other thing. Kind of.
Yeah, but I think what happens though is that it's the time to process and make it part of. I almost, and I could be wrong here, but sometimes it seems more like we gather information without making it have an impact on our life. And that's the point of apathy. So when you say like, oh, our prime minister is doing X, or there's corruption in our police force, or corruption in the New South Wales police force, or something like that, and you don't have this processing time to say, okay, how does this impact on me? What should I change about what I'm doing? Is this something that I should make action on? Should I do something about this information? It's just data for conversation's sake in some cases. You're just adding this information.
I mean, that's why the role of the analyst was always so important. The current affair, things like that. These people that are breaking down the news and discussing it. 7:30 Report is a good example of that. How it matters to people, that's a lost thing, in my opinion. That's kind of what I'm trying to do here. Like this example I gave of the local LLM, there's so many LLMs now. There's so many. Like if you go to Hugging Face, I didn't show you, but like all of these models, these come out 6 days, 1 day ago. New ones every day. And you got to find how this works for you. But this is one example, actually, how it will work for us. This is using an open source model that anyone can get. It's pretty comparable to the latest thing from OpenAI, and it's running locally, and it's safe to do so. It's kind of like curating for other people what they don't have to go through, to figure out this stuff for themselves. This is where the benefit is. Like if you can say, like an ethical solution to your problem would be this.
Well, the problem, and we've probably already spoken about this, but the biggest issue that I have with AI over anything else is, at what point do you say, I need to be able to have my brain do this instead of something else do it for me? Like, what point do we say, I need to use it because I'm going to lose it?
Yeah, I know this argument, yeah. Because I look at some of the YouTube coders, they're young, they're like 20s, early 20s, less probably. They can't code, but they can know how to get a AI to code for them. And they're not developing the coding skills, you can see, because there's 40-year-old guys, 50-year-old guys that have worked for Microsoft, and you can see how he codes. And it's so different. He's so like logical, and like he says less is more, and he just breaks it down to the very core elements of what you need to code. And it's like Peter Whitehouse. Remember him? He reminded me exactly of that philosophy, how he sort of approached IT. Whereas these kids now, they don't have that skill, but they can pump it into this, and it spits out code. Like I'll just quickly show you. I don't know if you have time, but I can say. Show top 20 topics as single words. I wonder if it'll work. And I have to remind you, this is running locally. It's not connecting to... Yeah, controversy, gaming, social media, attention, gossip, culture, technology, harmony. Oh, I shouldn't have done 20. It's going to be too long. But what I wanted to show you was Show this list as JSON.
See, the other thing as well on top of this is we don't know how much context is being added by the external models to prioritize these things.
So I'll just show you this one thing.
Number 20?
Love you, man.
You too, bud. I can't really read it, unfortunately.
No, I just wanted to see if this will work. Yeah, here it is. So I said, show this list, 20 words, whatever, as JSON, and now it's printing them in a format which I can use directly in code. I don't even have to know code, right?
Yep.
And this would be faster if I wasn't loading a bunch of stuff on my computer, you know? This would spit out instantly, normally. And so I don't have to know code now. And that part of my brain is like laxing because I've never exercising this anymore. And I can do the same, show this list as SQL. This is what first scared me about AI, because I typed in something like this and I thought, there's no way it can do anything good, but it did very, very well.
Oh, there's a lot you can do with it. The question is whether you, and this is the whole thing, is always been with technology, is should we?
Here it is. Look, create table topics. I can't make this bigger, but sorry, but you know, insert into topics values. It's like perfect SQL. It's like written so well that I could use this in my work for whatever instance I need it to. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, it's all good. And
now this is run locally. So like I could be in a corporate environment with my laptop. No one has to know. I've just put this in. It doesn't called out anything. I don't need access from the IT administrator to do this now. Right? I can just have a small low profile thing that I copy and paste my code into for work.
Is this an application that's like, I know you're saying it's local, but is it an application or is it what is it?
It runs as a server in Docker. This is the back end. So this is the server. It's a virtual server, basically. So any computer can run it. Mac, Linux, Windows. And then it has these services, which are all open source. And DIFY is the framework. And then Open Llama is how we loaded the language model, and Llama from Facebook is the model, and they're all open source. You chuck it on your computer, pull out the internet, and it'll work exactly like this. So it created this code with no outside, and I've tested it. Like, I don't.
Oh yeah, that's. But I mean, like, code in and of itself isn't too tricky. It's when you're trying to do the.
But I mean, like, I could tell it to do. What's that? Sorry. I could tell it to do something more complex than it would.
Yeah, I know. I've seen a lot of that stuff. Yeah, and I'm not against it so much as the question that I have is at what point, like, what's the point? What are we losing in the process? Because, you know, there's so many different languages and different things that you could. As soon as you have something like this and you just want it to be in the language of a tool, that can be a good thing. What are you losing in the process of doing that? And I'm not saying I have the answer to that. I guess like you're losing the knowledge of the language, but is there a problem with that?
Yeah, I know.
It's only when it comes down to, like, coding is valuable when it comes down to understanding greater complexities.
Because like before this, they were creating code languages like Google created their own language Go, and it was more efficient, and they were all fighting for this efficiency thing now. But now this has made it all irrelevant because it doesn't matter about code now. It matters like about prompts, and like if you can get the result from the same thing, we have enough computing power that it doesn't even matter about efficiency anymore. It's like
efficiency it does.
It's getting less and less though. Like I looked at this thing.
Well, the more complex the algorithms are, The more you're chunking large amount, and like these things have to chunk large amounts of data.
Well, that's the
If it
thing.
can,
Oh, sorry, go
there you go.
on. NVIDIA, um,
Because
new
when it's in
GPUs.
the cloud, that's one thing. But you are paying for processing power. Like these
This
companies have
thing,
to pay for processing power.
um, what is it? Anyway, this A series NVIDIA cards. You can get a 48 gigabyte one for $10,000 now. This is why NVIDIA's prices are skyrocketing, because they know this is what it's coming down to, and people will need this sort of GPU power. Um, Amazon and Google are building their own chips now, but they're behind. It's all mostly GPUs that do this. Um, and I don't know if I can show you the 10K one. Hang on, I might just try and find it. PC case gear.
I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to figure out what new computer to like getting a new. I want to get a new computer, but I need to be able to A, afford it, and B, know what the hell.
Look at
to
this
get.
thing, $12,000.
Yeah, I can't afford that.
But that's what I mean. That's specifically for this kind of thing. Local machines running language models. And not only what I showed you, like the next thing that I would try and figure out for myself is how to train a model. We didn't even talk about
Yeah,
training. This is just connecting to data and using the existing model. How do you go about
yeah.
training one with your own data?
That's where you get the interesting stuff. Yeah.
And now that I'm happy that it's run locally and not connected to any sources that can access my data, I can easily give it all of my journals. It can know me better than I know myself, Like all this data I've collected
Mm,
for myself, I can put it in and see what happens. Like it's really interesting time.
mm.
Because then it becomes, I was thinking, it's not about just about the computers. It's about us recording more. Like I was thinking about getting a device which I could walk around with me just to record my conversations. I would tell people that are you cool with me just having this thing? I'm just using it to train some data about how I think. And then I have all of that quickly transcribed, like in a couple of seconds. You could just dump it into a small text file, small amount of space involved in doing that, but it can know everything that I think, and like I can sort of see gaps in my knowledge and behaviors that I need to correct, and there's so much scope for it once you have it local and it's safe.
Mm. Yeah, and that's always the challenge, isn't it?
Well, this is proving that it can be done. Um,
Well, it's proving that it can be done unless your computer gets hacked. But yeah.
yeah, of course. You need to be secure on your own. Yeah,
Mm. No, it's really interesting.
but yeah, we're losing that work now. Like you say, we're losing that
Mm.
definitely. This skill is becoming less important, and it's a
There's
skill that I
a
invested years of my life in knowing, right? But it's
well, it's a
becoming
skill that I still have to like when I think about what this type of stuff has taught me, not AI, but coding and etc. It's not so much knowing what the code is, but the thought. It's about ways of thinking and ways of looking at information. And that's the value that I find. That's the translatable value. Because one thing that you can't do is you can't like you can, obviously you can, but you shouldn't ask a computer to decide what's important to you. Like you need to decide for you, like that's the ultimate in the end is when you're saying, okay, I'm no longer a human being, I'm just a cow. Uh, think for me. Tell me what's important. Um, yes, there's a lot of people trying to do that. That's what advertisements and all of this stuff is about people telling us what to think. But you don't want to ask a thing to think for you. Take all this information and tell me what to think and what to do next, because then you're basically giving up your agency as a human being and as a person.
mm,
So for me, the value in when I've done coding or when I've done analysis and all this stuff, the biggest value for me has been ways of looking at things and thinking differently, and like rotating pieces of information in my brain to think about it like you're talking about thinking laterally and all of that is like there's in coding there's logic, and when you learn about the way that logic works, like you can do it in Excel too. It doesn't really matter what the language is because there's a similarities across all the languages, and that's about understanding logic and the way that things work, and not just about loops, but how to think about information, the categorization of information, object-oriented languages, or where you've got arrays, looking at information and thinking about how information gets chunked into different parts, how to rotate information, or how to think about, okay, someone's given me information in a way that breaks it down to these points. Is there a way of looking at that and breaking it down into greater levels of detail? And if I can grade it, how do I structure a way of looking at something so that I can analyze it to the most varied extent to look for any type of relationship? Because when you get data coming through, data can, like let's say so you get a whole bunch of names, right? Just go down a basic level. Someone sends you a whole bunch of names. Okay, you can say, okay, design some code to pick it out and say what's the last name and the first name. So now you've created 2 rows. So okay, you've got surnames, now you've got first names. So from first names you could determine with a level of accuracy what a gender is, and with surnames you can look for associations between surnames, and then you can look outside of that and determine like potential histories of those individuals. Like just from 2 pieces of information you can split it out into sub pieces of information and then analyze it using external sources. So as soon as you start getting ways of thinking about information and relationships, that's the value for me in understanding coding and all of that. It's the way to look at a piece of information and how many ways can I look at this piece of information? What's in it? What are the pieces of it? What can be broken up into smaller pieces? Like that scientific process of breaking things down to their smallest particle size. Because all of these things make up bigger things, They all have histories, relationships. And when you talk about data, a lot of the time, when you're not talking scientific, it comes down to people. So when you're talking about data, you're talking about the relationships between people. When you're talking about financial data, anything, most information that we look at comes down to the behaviors of people. Mm. So when you look at coding, the important aspect of that is not the language, it's the logic. It's understanding the way that coding helps you think about the world around you. So as soon as you stop doing that, you stop having this ability to look at the world and break it down into different parts, see relationships, and understand yourself and what you're doing. You're talking about, where you're saying you negate me by categorizing me. Is like, we live in a world where all we do is categorize to understand. So, but if you only know how to go to one level of category, then you not like there's a level of negating a person. Yeah. You do negate a person by categorizing them, but you have a probability of being accurate. And the more you can break things down to its parts, the greater probability you have of being accurate, but it'll never be 100%. You'll never know who that person is. But there's how much I understand of a person, and that's how do we break things down into their parts? How do we look at information and understand all of the angles of looking at it? How do we rotate things in 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions,
and etc. I agree with you. So it's similar to this way of thinking. It's really hard to see. I should turn off this dark view. This is going to blind your eyes. Sorry, peeps. But this is the new code, I think. Like, it's just got little nodes of logic, and you don't really know how it works, but you know it does this thing. And another good example is these guys, N8 and this.io. It's basically workflow, but they're coding these things called agents. Here's an example. And
But
this is
each
also
of these
open
things,
source.
right? The way that these things are being created
Oh, this is
using
actually live.
logic. What you're doing is you are assigning to the AI to apply a way of thinking to come up with something.
See here, it says
So
fetch essay list, extract essay names, split into terms. You know, each node does a thing logically, like you say.
yeah,
But it's stored within this node, and like you don't really need to know how it works. Limit to
each of
first
them is a
three.
black box.
Yeah, fetch essay text, extract title, merge, clean up. This is the new code. They're not going to be
Yeah.
coding like the other way, where they have to select the SQL and Python. Where did it go? This is the new way. But once you dive into this, you can see how it works and settings for each thing.
Well, you will always go down to a level that you can't go any further past a certain level.
And
with
then
all
you've
of
got
these
your
things.
models connecting to it, you know, and your data loader. It's like very specific, like you say, to the data. You need to make sure that's clear. What's going in is clear.
Yeah.
So they have these loaders now, which parse and text split and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So this is what you're saying is exactly right. This is the.
And that's what these things do. But do people actually understand that that's what it's doing? Do they understand the underlying concept? Because when you're actually doing it yourself, and this stuff is actually happening because of what you're doing bit by bit, like that affects your brain. That affects the way that you look at things, the way you think about things. But if you're assigning this thing to do the work for you, it's doing that way of thinking without you having to do it. You're just telling it this thing does something that's really cool, and it breaks things out into its parts. If you've ever had to do it yourself, I don't know, and this is where I'm not sure whether it adds value or not.
Yeah, I think what'll happen is people will learn this very specific way of doing it for this company, for this N8A's way of doing it. They'll follow all the tutorials, but they won't ever learn how to code in JavaScript. They won't learn how to code in Python. But this will be enough to get them.
Do they need to?
No, this will get them by for the majority of things. And there's a community library where you can just get others' help, like Discords and. Once you're into this sort of framework, you will never need to get out. And it's moving so fast now that, there's so many .ai websites now,
Yeah.
You can get a meeting transcription or, summary and pay so much a month and you can get unlimited, blah. It's all happening very, very fast.
There'll be a lot of people hacking into these.
But then again, I don't even know. I don't know what to think about.
No,
that
they
side.
do. They get hacked into. A lot of this stuff gets hacked into.
But in terms of security, yeah, if you're chucking up your meeting stuff, fucking hell. Especially if you're in a private organization with.
Yeah, and you can say, well, what are they going to do with it all? And I say, well, hang on a sec. That's why you're using AI. You're asking AI to do stuff for you without you having to think about it. Do you think they're not going to do that? It's like, can you generate for me the locations of all of these people based on their last name and the town in which the thing and the company in which they operate? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what their, were like what time of day most of them would be working from?
So what do you think about regulation then? So in Australia, for instance, there has to be a transparency about how your data is handled for Australian AI companies, and for them to be approved, you have to display this regulation approved by this regulatory agency. I can't remember the name of it, but we have one. They have to be transparent about what they do with the data. No data is stored overseas. It's all in Australian servers. And there has to be security around that. Like it has to be in a data warehouse with certain access. What do you think about Australia's response to the regulations now?
Look, I'm sure that they're probably doing the best that they can. But banks still get hacked. our information still gets divulged. We all sign up to the same services that are overseas, so our data's like it. People care less about the companies than they do about their own personal information, and these companies don't seem to do a very good job of holding on to it, regardless of the regulations. Like I know that there's stuff that they're doing that like and it's also every company is different. There's all kinds of like it's the best that they can do. Do you know what I mean? Like people are doing the best that they can do, but
I think it does. The regulations that they have in place do modify how companies operate in this field.
it does. Yep.
Because they have
But it
to.
doesn't.
Like otherwise, they won't get the approval, and people will see that as a big red flag, especially if you're like, corporate and you have to do due diligence, and it's not approved by the regulatory body, then you're not going to get many sales.
What about the what was it, Medibank hacks? We've got like you've got stuff that's already getting hacked into. Big companies that are getting hacked into even now. Like,
I'm talking about the AI regulatory stuff.
But what's going to be the difference? What's the difference?
These are people whose job are to protect us, basically, with this new technology. They're inventing these regulations, these rules that companies who are in the space in Australia have to abide by.
Australia has not yet enacted any specific statutes or regulations that directly regulate AI. To date, Australia's response to AI has been voluntary and includes the AI ethics principles published in 2019. Current state of play of AI regulated in Australia. This is April. There are no generally applicable law regulating. There have been a range of consultations, steps that organising can take now to begin preparing for future reforms. There's currently no general recent developments. July 2023, there was a Royal Commission Robo-Debt Scheme. Australian Government's response to Privacy Act review report. Interim response relating to its safe and responsible. Can you put into AI what's the latest AI reforms in Australia?
Hang on, I'm trying to find something. Compliance, here it is. Because I did see this.
The company that I work for, when this started happening, we had a general discussion.
Here it is, Aaron, sorry. APP compliant. What does it mean? Oh, it's just privacy. Australian privacy.
Yeah. It's just going to be the same as everything else at this stage.
Yeah, it's funny, eh?
Use of personal information with ChatGPT. The Office of the Victorian Controller has released a statement indicating Victorian government bodies must ensure staff and contractor service providers do not use personal information with ChatGPT due to the privacy risks involved, and stated that the use of personal information with ChatGPT should be treated as an information security incident that must be notified to OVIC.
So I looked at the one that I thought was, being in place of Australia's regulations, but it's only privacy. So I met this guy. He says he's working on regulations towards AI. So it must not be in place yet. So they're relying on privacy laws, which are very outdated. It always
takes forever. It takes forever. Like that, the government bodies are very slow when it comes to regulation.
But the paper that I read is that this is what they're taking. These are the stance. They're not using offshore servers, local servers only.
That's standard approach.
No, well, not everyone. Like
a lot of companies are required to store their data within Australia in order to be compliant.
Oh,
It depends on which. it depends on the industry, but when you're talking about like a lot of companies, it's like they are required to keep
But
certain
who's
types
the
of
body
information.
then?
I can't remember,
Uh,
honestly. Like,
but you know what I mean?
I,
Like, in terms of protection, that's a good step forward. At least the companies that aren't, it's a lot harder if your server's in the US, and you say you got hacked. Well, fuck, man, you're in a much bigger like area to get hacked. Whereas if you're in Australia, at least, you know, if you're using an Amazon warehouse in, Canberra or whatever, you've got a smaller probability of getting your data
yeah,
hacked.
I think that relates to physical security.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but they can still, like, overseas companies can still get access to your data.
Yeah. That's why local, I reckon, honestly. And local's good enough for us to store all our emails and whatever, porn and, locally, we've all got it on our computers. No one's after it, honestly. There's a lot to go, unless you're someone of importance. Like, have you ever been hacked?
I've never had porn on my computer.
But have you ever been hacked?
I don't know if I've been, not that I'm aware of.
Where someone blackmails you for something they've got from your computer
Well,
locally?
no.
Yeah. Our security is very good. Like, we have firewalls. That's enough.
No, that isn't necessarily it. Look, just
Unless
because
unless you click
it
on
has,
Trojans and you're like the ones that like you're opening your own vulnerabilities, that's your fault then. Like,
I'm not going to agree with that. Like, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I'm not going to
but
agree with it either because,
you shouldn't be storing
because
compromising
neither.
stuff on your computer if you're that type of user then.
But everyone's well, not well. It's compromising depending on what type of compromising we're talking about.
Put it
Like,
on a
if you
hard
if you
drive. Don't have it on your computer if you're clicking on those links, man. Honestly.
what I'm
That's an
saying,
educational thing, right?
I'm not talking about Trojans. What I'm talking about is you're talking about like the blanket stuff that everyone gets hit with, including people who don't know anything about this stuff. So older people who still don't know, who still fall for the Telstra texts and all of that stuff because like you can't blame people. People fall for it all the time.
I mean,
Like
those
I'm not
phishing things, I'm talking about Trojans specifically, though. Like, if you don't know not to click on that thing, you've opened up a back door. Like, that means your whole system's compromised. If you don't know that, then you shouldn't have anything on that local PC.
that's not logical. That's not correct thinking, sorry.
Why?
Because you're associating our level of knowledge to people who don't have our level of knowledge. You're associating the behaviors of what we consider to be reasonable people to a majority group that isn't necessarily thinking the way that we do or
No,
have the level
it's
of knowledge that we
100% an
have.
education thing. I'm not saying that these people shouldn't be educated. I'm saying that
No,
by
but
clicking on
maybe
that
they can't
link,
be.
you have compromised everything on that PC, and it shouldn't have
Yeah,
anything of value to you. Because then,
but what you're saying is that they deserve what they get.
no, I'm
That's what it
saying
sounds
delete
like you're saying.
everything of value to you because it is compromised. On that PC, you can no longer use it.
They've gone into your computer and they're using that as a hack against you. Then you lose all your family photos and all of that type of stuff. It's like you can't say it's
Do you
not
know what I
like
mean?
what
Like,
these.
this person has their bank account details with all their money from their life
Hmm.
savings on this PC where they've clicked a link from. Immediately, that person should delete all of those bank details because it is a compromised computer. That's what I'm saying.
Once they're aware of it, yes, but what if they're not aware of it?
Uh, that's the thing. Like, the person that's clicking on those links, as soon as you see someone doing that, you have to tell them that that's what's happened. There's nothing you can
Who's
do.
going to tell them?
Um, I don't know why you're arguing with me, honestly.
Um, no,
I'm trying to protect people from, like, this is what I'm saying. Your computer is safe, but if you're clicking on those links, it is no longer safe.
yes, I agree. But I guess what I'm saying is, so what I'm arguing against is, uh, how do I put it? that we, what I was trying to argue for is that I don't know what lengths people can go to when they want to get onto your computer. Like we're just the general broad people. You know, we're just this person, or like we're not like, I don't know, Trump. You know, we're not a prime minister. Like, we're not significant figures. And I don't know what types of attacks a person could do against a computer when they really, really want to, and what I'm not a hacker, so I don't know what level. Like, I know about Trojans, I know about, you know, links and clicking and phishing emails and texts and all that stuff.
Generally
But I'm
speaking,
sure
that's what
there's
it
other
takes.
stuff.
It takes a user
Yeah.
from the inside to connect to some untrusted source, usually
Yeah.
through something like this, where you've clicked on a link, you don't know what it did, but it opened up a door. You have to do that. It's safe until that point, right?
Mhm.
There's nothing they can do until that point.
I don't know.
No, there
if
isn't.
that's what
Yeah.
if that's what you're saying, then okay.
Yeah.
Then based on that, yes.
There's no
I
way
just-
they can
the-
get
I don't-
through that security because nothing's open. Like, there's no open ports, basically.
Mm.
By default, all our internet routers closed off everything.
I mean, there are things I think they can do at the heart, like at the source, like go to your home, outside your home. There are other things that can be done there.
But they would
I
have to
believe.
be in your house. They'd have to be before the network router, because by default, everything's closed on the default. You have to open
Well,
up ports.
I've heard that some people have like things that they can point at your, like if they can get to you through your window.
Wi-Fi.
like lasers
If they're
and
close
stuff
enough for
like that.
Wi-Fi, yeah, that's inside your network. So then, yeah. But that's pretty hard to do. You'd have to be pretty hardcore. You need to
Yeah.
sit there for a day, packet sniffing, to get the password, right?
Yeah.
You'd have to be very dedicated.
And that's kind of what I mean is that, like, generally we are fine. It's just my what I wonder is when a person targets you, when a group targets you to get that information.
It's always you. It's always that action of clicking the link.
As always you. Okay.
Yeah. And that's extremely dangerous, you know? Like, that's why I'm saying the importance of security. If you've
absolutely.
if you've got stuff that you care about and you're a clicker, get it off your PC because it's compromised most likely. You don't even realize it. That's where, like you say,
yeah.
it's physical. Get it on a hard drive. Put it somewhere else.
Well, even then, like there are things that like can't they just like attack your IP or something and crash your computer, or
There's
like aren't there things that
denial of
other people
service, distributed denial of service, but that's web servers. They're all open. They're on the web. Your PC is not open to anything except for what
But
you've allowed.
But if they know your IP, what can they do with your IP?
Nothing.
Okay. They can. I guess they know where you live. Is probably that.
They get that info from the ISP, unfortunately. I think it should be private. I think you can pay to have it private, but they know where you live,
Right.
basically. Yeah. What they can do with
That's
that is pretty small.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty scary, you know, that all of this stuff.
You just have to be,
I find.
I think, aware
Like
of
I'm
your
yeah,
risks, like what data you've got that you think is compromising, and just be aware of it. Like bank stuff, definitely keep it off. Don't keep it in the cloud, 100%. Don't chuck it up there. Keep it local.
Like I'm not talking for myself either, because for me, like I've got lots of stuff set up, and I'm very conscious of this stuff. But I'm thinking of other people I know who they just either they don't have that knowledge or they don't have that mental energy to like it's not like we were kind of brought up during a period of time when we became aware of this stuff and it kind of entered into our consciousness. But there are probably groups that are either too young and they haven't kind of developed that as part of their consciousness, or they're older now. and it's never entered their consciousness, or they never, like we were brought, we both had IT backgrounds to some extent. Like even though like it was just in school for me, I was brought up around I knew IT people, and I knew my way around a computer to some extent. So, but that isn't necessarily indicative of what the majority of people are. I don't know what the majority of people are, so I don't know how susceptible they are to things. Like, it's you're clicking on it, but how easy it, like for us, we look at this stuff and it's just like, oh no, that's crap. We know, like, no, ignore it. Like, it's perfectly natural for us to just look at this and know immediately to ignore it. But I don't know what that's like for other people, because companies still fall into this. Like, companies fall into this. You've got, like, some of the schemes they use against companies is they're pretty sophisticated. Like, they can figure out like the name of the person, and they send it from, like, they know that like they can figure out who the secretary is of like a CEO. They mimic the secretary's email, and they send it to this person and stuff, and they get, like, they basically, people just don't read the information of the person's
It's super targeted,
address. Yeah, and just like they're in.
There
Just
is a
people
level
fall
of
for
that stuff, yeah, but we weren't talking about that. That was personal home users, but absolutely,
Yeah.
it's at a point now where it's easier than ever to get that sort of information,
Yeah.
and target someone
Yeah.
to click the link, right? They still need
Yes.
that click,
Yeah.
but you're
They still need the
targeting
click.
them that they believe that they have to.
That's
So,
it.
that's
right.
kind of very, very grey. We're not at risk of that because no one wants what we've got, but
No, but this comes down to that company thing of where you're talking about privacy, about where people are storing their data. Even though the data gets stored in Australia, they can still get to it because they go through the company itself. They go through their computer systems, and they
Yeah.
get access to the data.
anyone in that
So
company can leak that info.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
They have the security privileges to do so, and that's the risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's not local on your computer in front of you, don't trust it, I'd say.
Yeah. Like, I know that I'm aware of, not in my organization, but in other organizations, stuff has happened. Like, well, it's stuff that everyone, like, it was in the news and things like that, where, they got hacked into and locked down, and, like, were put to, what's it called? They held it to ransom.
Yeah.
It's like big issues like that.
And it's usually
But,
just money, right? They pay them out.
I'm not sure. I don't know what they did in the end, because they don't normally talk about it. But what they do. But they cause a lot of headaches, and it's all because that one person, as you said, clicked to get through.
But that's a very scary thought. If it's getting to the point of targeting people like that, very specific information, yeah, it's unfortunate, because we have to be on our guard, and also pay our IT security people money because, like, for instance, my card just got hacked. Someone got the details from my bank card. Who knows how? But it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
We use our bank details
That's
everywhere. I use it on my train. So it's everywhere. But, like, someone's from somewhere's leaked it, and now there's an expense in US for $8,000.
Really?
That immediately got cancelled because of the IT security. Like, they're
Yeah.
so onto it. We have to pay that now.
Well, it's
a
a bit of it's a mixed thing too, because, like, they're onto it immediately, but they're probably the people who got hacked in the first place.
Might be.
They would be, like, the banks don't tell you about half of the stuff that happens to them.
Yeah. But at least they're paying for the people to do it now. So this is the age we live in. We need to pay that tax now because and it's also the state of society. Like, it's getting more expensive. People are getting more desperate. So it's going to occur more often. We can't just pretend that we're not putting stress on the lower class, lower classes. So,
and that's kind of that. Yeah, that kind of comes back to, as well as about just that, AI making everything easier for people to some extent. but also it's not allowing people to train their brains to think in a
Critically.
certain way. And that to me is the biggest danger from the danger for AI is mental degradation.
Reliance on it, but I don't know. I almost see our future as we're sort of it's
Oh,
happening
it's an
so fast.
inevitability,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
It's basically an inevitability. Like I've talked to people and they say, "Oh, I got all my ideas from ChatGPT. Oh, I got all my business proposals and the way to do all my stuff from ChatGPT. I did all this with the ChatGPT," and it's just like, mm, yeah, like it's
It's come down to the point where it's your personal risk. Like, what are you actually using the data that you're sending out? Is it
yeah,
actually you have to evaluate it on a case by case almost now. Like, if I'm
yeah,
just using it for my resume, that's fine. But if I want something personal, I'll have it local now. I'll have that
mm,
local instance, and I make sure that it's the best model that I can afford, that I can sort of run on my computer, and that will have to be enough because I'm not sending it to the cloud.
mm.
There's no way I
Well,
trust that.
but to me, it's sort of like there's the IT question. There's the privacy and all of that considerations. But to me, the thing that's probably the greater risk for everything is what it does to the self, is what it does to you as a person.
I mean, we're in
Like,
our 40s now, so we've
yeah,
already fully developed. The biggest risk, as you say, is people that are developing, that are no longer having these. Um, it's like you say, like this discipline that you need to sit down and do something
well, I
yourself.
don't think it's just. I think it's like it's about teaching critical thinking and a way of thinking. Like learning how to think a certain way is hard. Like that's the whole point of learning. Learning is not easy because you are training your brain to do something differently. And that's the experience of difficulty is your braining forming new connections and all of that. That's what's you don't drive a car all of a sudden, like all of that stuff
But the
takes
example
time.
I'll give you is like we're in our 40s. I would
Yeah,
100% now, knowing that I can load 50 PDFs into my local AI, summarize those for me because I don't have the time to. But I can get the benefit
mm,
from having 50 PDFs worth of knowledge in my brain. But
true.
I know the research, so there's less risk of me being affected by it. But for a 20-year-old
Yes.
who hasn't sat through and read 50 PDFs to find one thing useful, he's at harm, right? He's not developing
Yeah.
that.
Yep. No, it's true. I guess the only other thing with regards to us at our age and using AI is the same thing as other things like retirement, things when you get older and like retirement, all of these things. The danger then is the lack of exercising the brain, which increases your risk of things like dementia and other types of mental breakdown disorders.
Yeah.
Like you have to keep using your brain to keep it working. So if we
I
give in to
I
all that stuff,
think
yeah,
what we will find is that everything's moving so fast, we will have to keep up in different ways. We're keeping up in a different way entirely now. It's kind of like
mm,
we're getting more information, but in a different way. It's all sort of summarized for us, but we have to make sense of it in a new way because it's all new, happening so fast.
yeah. I guess in a way, AI is the person who would probably benefit the most from AI is us. It's not people who are like young because they need to develop certain critical thinking skills. But for us, we need something that allows us to keep up with people who can, because, I'm not learning things as quickly as I used to. I don't have time to, as you say, I don't have time to do a lot of things. I'm got all of these other things going on in my life. And when I have time off, I don't want to be thinking about new things and injecting new stuff all the time. I want to break. So really things like AI and stuff would be of advantage to us because we can get it to do shortcuts for things. So I guess as long as I still think that we do need, as long as we're still doing the stuff that to go all the way back to the beginning activates the singular prefrontal zeitgeisty whatnot all full the
Anterior mid cingulate cortex.
you got it, right, it bastard. Anterior mid cingulate cortex. As long as we're doing that stuff, because this is all about brain health.
Yep.
I think that AI in some ways, the advantage of it is in a world where it's so hard to digest so much information, as long as you're asking the right questions and you're using AI in the right way, you can definitely get the advantages out of it. What I think is just recognize the limitations of using it as well, because it's a crutch, and so you still have to have that, maintain a level of critical thinking and not let that ever go.
Yeah,
Don't
100%.
get mentally complacent.
100%. I agree.
Sorry if I came across as argumentative before.
Oh no. All good. Oh, you weren't. Oh, it was all good. This has been a long one. I thought we were done at around half.
I thought I was done. I thought we were done too.
Anyway.
I think both our eyes are like.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that, man. Thanks everyone.
Make sure you delete that stuff that I said.
Oh yeah, I will. Okay.
Sorry. Sorry.
All good. Thanks everyone.
Even when I was saying it, I was like, "Shut up." I was just like, I must have
Let's
been
get offline first.
Right.
All right. Stopping now. See you guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.